Number 10. Jim Gordon. Jim Gordon ended up being recruited as a new Batman after the fallout of Endgame in the comics. Jim wasn't really in a great place to be commissioner, as he had just recovered from the effects of Joker venom, which had left him unhinged and violent, initially trying to kill his friend Batman. But at the same time, he was also still someone that the government and the police saw as being extremely useful. He had years of service under his belt, he knew Gotham like the back of his hand, and with Batman and Joker both believed to be dead, Gotham and its people were looking for a new man to take up the Batman mantle. Enter Jim Gordon. The government gave him training, muscle implants, and a new tech-based armor mech suit that also happened to have at least semi-sentience. Jim named the suit Rookie and would both wear and work alongside it, in tandem with the police and government as a new, weirdly svelte Batman. That suit was tight. Of course, you could argue that Jim wasn't great as Batman, considering when Bruce returned, he kinda had some messes to clean up. But as a Batman who worked with the law and had a more intimate understanding of the justice system, it could also be argued that Gordon, in his own way, was better. Number 9. Azrael. Depending on your opinion of how best to deal with criminals, there are some who think Azrael did a bang-up job as Batman and even would like to see him return to the mantle. Azrael ended up acting as Batman after Bruce Wayne had his back broken by Bane. Batman ends up leaving Jean-Paul Valley in charge while he works on healing up and recovering. At first, Azrael seemed like a pretty good replacement, but he quickly gets wrapped up in his mission to bring criminals to justice. Azrael is considered to be more brutal and violent than Batman, going so far as to even kill criminals who oppose him and not backing down when Bruce finally returns to take the Batman mantle back. Bruce even has to call in backup from his Robins to take down Azrael in the end. While Jean-Paul was definitely a different kind of Batman, he was a kind of different that some prefer. And friends, before we move on to our next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more seemingly impossible lists like this one, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Damian Wayne. And if you like supers who are not afraid to kill, do I have a Batman for you. Damian Wayne in the alternate future that is Earth 666 ends up becoming Batman after the current Batman, Dick Grayson, is killed by exploding Jokerfish. With Grayson dead, Damian believes that the only way to fight against crime is to go to extremes, believing that killing is the only way. Needless to say, this stance creates a lot more problems for Gotham, and especially for Commissioner Barbara Gordon, who becomes kind of a sworn enemy to Batman. In the end, Damian as Batman does bring about the destruction of Gotham and possibly the destruction of the world, but in a way, he was still super successful in what he set out to do. Damian created a bargain with the devil, trading his soul in exchange for becoming the eternal protector of Gotham, which is what happened. Of course, as with any wish or deal with the devil, there's always a twist. And in this case, the twist is that Gotham ends up being destroyed due to a nuclear strike. Still, Damian does protect Gotham till the very end of its existence. What more can you ask from Batman? Other than to, I guess not let Gotham be destroyed, which is a fair ask, I suppose. Number 7. Elliot Ness. Elliot Ness becomes the Batman in the Elseworld story Batman Scar the Bat from 1996. The reason why I think Elliot Ness makes a better Batman than Bruce Wayne? Well, because he's based on a real-world character who actually fought to stop criminals in Chicago during the Prohibition era. He was a special agent who was known for taking down Al Capone with the help of his fellow law enforcement team, who were known as the Untouchables. In Scar of the Bat, we see Elliot Ness as a 1920s version of Batman, supposedly the one who inspired the character from the comics. Ooh, at least in this version of the story. When Elliot Ness finds he can't do enough within the limits of the law, he becomes a vigilante, taking up the mantle Batman because he fights crime sometimes with a bat. In turn, this weapon is chosen by Ness as Batman to scare criminals like Al Capone, who himself was known for beating those who betrayed him to death with a baseball bat. That's a scene that happens at the beginning of this comic. In the end, Elliot wins the day and hangs up the Batman mantle, allowing one of his colleagues who is on his deathbed to claim to have been Batman so as not to besmirch Ness's name and ensure that the criminals get booked the proper way. Basically avoiding any hearsay, because if you're a vigilante and you try to take someone for justice, people won't be like, but you're a criminal, so it's all thrown out. One of those things. After recounting the truth to his biographer years later, Elliot Ness seemingly dies in his sleep due to a heart failure at his kitchen table, which I believe is the actual way that Elliot Ness died in history. So yeah, I like stories where characters get to be heroes from history, because I like history. Number 6. Jace Fox, aka Timothy Call Me Jace Fox, the son of Lucius Fox and Tanya Fox and brother to Tiffany, Tam, and Luke Fox. This might be a hot take, but I would argue that Jace was a better Batman because he chose to step up to the plate at a time when Bruce Wayne basically couldn't be Batman. So at that time period, he was better since Bruce wasn't even Batman, but was instead the Dark Detective, having to operate, well, more in the dark. due to being a super wanted criminal. However, Jace saw the importance of the symbol of Batman and decided to take up the mantle in Bruce's place, despite the danger. He might not have as much experience as Batman, but he definitely comes with his own skill set and training backing him up. Jace's Batman in Future State also has access to future tech that current and past Bruce doesn't, because Future State.
At number 5, we have the DCAU Superman from Batman Beyond. Only aging slightly, leaving some gray in his hair, this version of Kal-El is actually turned evil by Starro the Conqueror, who influences his actions over time to fit his evil agenda. But before this is found out, Superman leads the Justice League Unlimited for a while into the future, even inviting Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond, into the League. It's good he does this too, because Batman becomes the one who frees Superman from Starro's grasp down the line. This version of Superman is a more experienced and stronger hero, and although he's tricked by a villain into doing some evil deeds, this isn't a list ranking power or wit. This version of Superman is just one of the more well-known and respected, and I figured he at least had to go in the top 5. At number 4 is Jordan Elliott. This is one of my personal favorites of these future versions of Superman because it's a rare example of a future Kal-El hanging up the mantle of Superman and actually living the existence of a mortal man, which I think is a pretty cool glimpse into the character and how he would act if his life were simple and much less influential. His motivation to do this is that he actually ends up killing Mr. Mxyzptlk, which thank goodness, so I don't have to say the guy's name anymore. Who he kills after the annoying little dude lays out a number of bad things to happen in Superman's life. In a fit of shame, Superman voluntarily walks into a room containing gold kryptonite, which strips him of his powers permanently. He then takes on the name of Jordan Elliott after his father Jor-El, and marries Lois Lane in anonymity. And honestly, I'm happy for the dude, because we don't have to deal with that little Mxyzptlk guy anymore, right? And also, Superman's done enough. At number 3 is the Superman from the Dark Knight Returns storyline. One of the most iconic storylines involving both Superman and Batman takes place in a future where the government, aka Lex Luthor and Brainiac, has control over him, and they force Superman to carry out missions for them as a kind of superpowered contractor. A brainwashed superpowered contractor, that is. Seeing this from afar, Bruce Wayne decides he has to venture into the dangerous territory of mortal versus alien combat, taking on Superman 1v1. Luckily, Clark Kent comes back from his brainwashing, but only after a huge battle between the two former friends. At number 2 is the Superman from the Kingdom Come storyline. This iconic future version of Superman has to come out of retirement to protect the human race against a new, misguided group of younger super beings. A more grizzled, aged, and wise Superman, the Kingdom Come storyline brings a ton of humanity to the character as he faces the challenge of humbling himself and his allies in their older age. After a murderous superhero named Magog is acquitted of killing the Joker, Superman goes into hiding for 10 years, leaving Kansas to be overrun by a community of misguided superpowered beings. Having also lost Lois Lane, Superman becomes jaded, but ultimately comes out of hiding to reform the Justice League. On top of reforming a younger generation of misguided heroes though, and well, a brainwashed Captain Marvel, which adds a huge rut in the whole works, they have to also prevent the humans from dropping 3 massive nuclear bombs on Kansas, which are also superpowered to affect superpowered beings more than they originally would. This version of Superman shows a side to the hero that we are not used to, giving him a wiser, more jaded disposition. It really proves that doing the right thing is just in Kal-El's blood, no matter how much the world has betrayed him. At number 1 is Superman Prime. This has got to be the most powerful and iconic futuristic version of Superman from the comics, and don't get this mixed up with Superboy Prime either, that's a whole other guy. Superman Prime appears in the DC 1 Million series and sets out at the end of the 21st century to explore the cosmos. He then returns briefly in the 700th century, that's roughly 70,000 years later, and spends his time in his new Fortress of Solitude, which is the sun. Finally, another 10,500 years later in the 853rd century, he comes back again, this time with a totally golden makeover, and creates a new Lois Lane from scratch along with some other key players from his old life. This version of Superman is just completely overpowered and more of a god than many other iterations of the hero, giving us a glimpse into the vast expanse and possibility of a distant future for Superman.
In at 10, Jim Gordon. In the wake of Batman's apparent death against the Joker, plans for a new Batman were discussed. With Powers International laying the groundwork for a Batman-inspired task force, their first candidate chosen to model the program was Jim Gordon, who was initially hesitant to fill Batman's shoes but eventually agreed. Going through intense government training and getting surgical muscle implants, Gordon was given the first model of the new Batman robot armor, which he nicknamed Rookie, and took to the streets as the new Batman. By complete chance, he finds Bruce Wayne and informs him that he has taken up the reins as Batman, and as Gordon hears several different reports about Bruce Wayne being found dead throughout Gotham, he works with Batman to figure out that a Batman from an alternate dark universe, known as the Batman Who Laughs, is the one responsible. Tracking him down, Gordon seeks help from his estranged son, James Jr. However, another dark version of Batman arrives and introduces himself as the Grim Knight. But it's certainly jarring to see Batman go from this big bulky hero to a lanky Jim Gordon. He looks fragile, but I mean still, it's kinda dope that Gordon becomes Batman. In at 9, Flashpoint. Thomas Wayne's Batman from the Flashpoint timeline is a fascinating and tragic character, and honestly, one of my favorite versions of Batman. In this alternate universe, it was Bruce Wayne who was killed in the alleyway, causing his father, Thomas, to become Batman instead. Unlike his son's more traditional superhero version, Thomas Wayne's Batman operates more like a vigilante, using brutal and even lethal tactics to take down his enemies. He's a hardened and embittered figure who has given up hope for justice in a world riddled with corruption and violence. And I mean, given his origin, I kinda get it. I understand why. Despite his brutal methods though, Thomas is driven by a deep sense of love and protection for his wife Martha, who has gone insane and actually become the Joker in this reality after the loss of their son. He'll stop at nothing to try and save her, even if it means crossing moral boundaries. Thomas Wayne's Batman is a dark and tragic twist on the traditional Batman mythology, and he reminds us that the choices we make, even the ones made with the best intentions, can have unforeseen and devastating consequences. But also he killed Reverse Flash, which is pretty dope. In at 8, Red Rain. Batman investigates a series of gruesome murders in Gotham City, only to discover that the killer is none other than Dracula, the legendary vampire. Batman teams up with a rogue vampire named Tanya to stop Dracula and his brood from terrorizing the city, but in the course of it, Batman actually makes Tanya turn him. Yeah, he becomes a vampire to fight the vampires. Tanya then provides Batman with a blood substitute to spare him from the cycle of death and murder that comes with being bitten by a vampire, but in order to destroy Dracula's minions, Batman lures them into the Batcave, where Tanya and her followers engage them in combat. Batman detonates multiple explosives, destroying Wayne Manor and exposing the cave to sunlight, which ultimately kills all the vampires inside it. Batman then confronts Dracula himself and impales the vampire lord on a tree that had been struck by lightning. This act, however, comes at the cost of Batman's humanity, as Dracula drained the last of his blood. Nevertheless, Batman assured Alfred that he has nothing to fear, as the Batman, with his new literally vampiric powers, will live on forever. The most Batman version on this list, if I'm honest. In at 7, Gotham by Gaslight. Gotham by Gaslight is about 19th century Bruce Wayne recalling the killing of his parents as a child. Consulting with Dr. Sigmund Freud, yes that one, about the dreams he's had about the deaths of his parents and significantly bats, he then returns to Gotham City to become Batman and fight crime. The Gotham press begins to circulate the news of the Batman and soon links his appearance to a series of women found killed throughout the city. The identity of the killer is announced by Commissioner Tolliver to be Jack the Ripper. Eventually, Bruce is accused of the murders and sentenced to be and is imprisoned at Arkham Asylum. But with the help of Alfred, he escapes, dons the Batsuit, and stops Jack the Ripper, who is revealed to be Jacob Packer. Jacob then also confesses to causing the deaths of Thomas and Martha and framing Bruce in revenge for Martha's rejection. The comic was a one-shot from January of 1990, but became a fan favorite and is quite the interesting and dark tale, because Batman fighting Jack the Ripper, that's kinda dope. In at 6, Dark Claw. Logan Wayne is a combination of obviously Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC #3. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' killing at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. His uncle was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and was ambushed and murdered by poachers a short time after his arrival in Canada. After the death of his uncle, Logan then went to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X project, the Canadian Super Soldier program, and it was here where Logan had adamantium bonded to his bones and learned of his metamutant nature. The Weapon X project was terminated due to its dual failure. Logan was ineffective as a weapon because he possessed a conscience, but this didn't stop him from being pretty damn badass. Having all the powers of Logan, as well as things like the Clawcopter and Clawmobile, I'm not even kidding, those are actually things, this is essentially a superpowered Batman, and I think that that's something we all wanted. Plus, Dark Claw, that's a great freaking name, dude. That's dope. That's terrifying.
Kicking off the list today at number 10 is Lord Iron. Kicking off the list with Marvel 1602, otherwise known as Earth 311. This Earth takes a bunch of the Marvel characters we love and plops them in the Elizabethan era, and yes, that includes Iron Man. Going by the name Anthony Stark, aka Lord Iron, his armor is powered by quote-unquote lightning bottles, and was created when Anthony was captured in the Holy Land during the English-Spanish Wars and treated rather harshly by the Hulk, resulting in the requirement of the suit just to survive. Anthony is sent on a mission to hunt down Banner in the New World with his technologically advanced suit. Now, look, this suit in comparison to other versions of Iron Man is not the most advanced and powerful suit, and you'd expect that from the time period. But when looked at with the scope of the technology at the time, it's centuries ahead of its time, being nearly on par with the base Iron Man armors, only it has a super sweet lightning sword. Number 9, Iron Man 2099. In the dark, ultra-capitalist dystopian society of Marvel 2099, Tony Stark is physically long gone. Instead, it's a guy by the name of Sonny Frisco who takes on the mantle of Iron Man. The technology behind Sonny's advanced suit of armor is a full century ahead of Tony Stark's tech, but despite that, the basic range of powers and abilities are curiously the same. Iron Man 2099 flies around at supersonic speeds and generates powerful energy blasts. Plus, he has a metric butt ton of firepower and gadgets. What I think makes Sonny Frisco better is that the character actually has an advanced intellect comparable to Tony Stark's, or even better with the knowledge of this future world. Sonny built the suit of armor himself, as any Iron Man worth his salt should, and he earned his place on the Avengers team of 2099 in the process. If you guys have your own favorite alternate Iron Man variants that don't make this list, or you just have ideas for future videos, don't be shy and make sure to drop them down in the comments below. We love to hear from you guys whenever we can. But moving on to number 8, Exile. Tony Stark, the undisputed monarch of Earth. What? Yes. They take a man with the intelligence, wealth, and power of Anthony Stark and make him unbothered by any kind of sense of morality, and that's a man who can bring the world to its knees. But he also has the sense to not let them know it, and then be begged to take charge. Tony Stark of Earth 42777 acquired every world conglomerate, he organized a mutant war against humanity, and then defeated their leader, Magneto. He created a worldwide famine, the likes of which was never seen before, and then he invented the cures and vaccines to fix it. He then got elected president. He developed weather controlling technologies to create biblical level natural disasters in Europe and Asia, having them beg for help to the point of giving up their own control. Central America and Canada had economic down spirals that brought them into the fold as well, and he made a deal with Dr. Doom, who had attacked the Capitol and taken out all the other democratic leaders in America. And then he destroyed Doom after receiving a blast to the face that left him disfigured, just like Emperor Palpatine. He's D-Life the Hulk. This version of Tony Stark is ruthless and powerful, and that is why he's on this list. Number 7, Ultimate Universe Iron Man. Having your mind and body altered by an Infinity Gem sounds like it could go anywhere, but fittingly for Tony Stark, it led to him being able to physically and mentally interact with pretty much any computer ever. And that's a pretty good ability for someone who flies around in a technological suit of armor. The Antonio Stark of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe, has basically become part man, part machine. Kinda like Cyborg, but not really. Being able to project his mind into computers and androids, allowing him to be nigh unkillable, proven when the Master, aka Reed Richards, of this universe seemingly brought his demise, but he became a non-physical entity which could manifest itself via computer systems. When actually physically inhabiting an Iron Man armor, he gains the usual abilities, plus force fields and cloaking, but he's also got nanites in his bloodstream that he uses to control his suits, as well as open locks, defuse little boom booms, and interact with all forms of technology before he gets infused with Infinity Gem and becomes super cool. Number 6. Iron Hammer. The Iron Man from the 2018 comic book event Infinity Warps blended the characters of Iron Man and Thor to make for one of the most powerful versions of Tony Stark ever. For some backstory, this warp world was created when Gamora gained the power of the Infinity Stones, and she used them to fold the universe in half, merging souls together, creating amalgamated heroes like Stark Odinson. This awesome version of Iron Man and Thor enjoys virtual immortality thanks to his Asgardian physiology, along with superhuman strength and endurance. His hammer, Mjolnir Iron, I know, stupid name, just go with it, has all the same powers as the regular Mjolnir, but it also grants Stark his armor, which is now a mystical suit of Asgardian armor that does all the same cool things. Since both Thor and Tony kind of had daddy issues, this version of the mix also has their father, Howard Odin, playing a big part in the story too. It's just really awesome. Okay. Number 5. Iron Maniac. Coming at us from the alternate Earth of 5012, the Iron Maniac shows readers what a totally evil version of Tony Stark would look like, other than the Exiles version. That one's also really evil. This Tony Stark from this war-torn version of the Marvel Universe has done some truly horrible things following the loss of so many of his fellow heroes at the hands of a villain named Titanus. Using a really cool armor that also somewhat resembles Doctor Doom's armor, the Iron Maniac went against the Fantastic Four and even took the life of Johnny Blaze in his native universe. His advanced armor repels some magical attacks, as well as generates a neural dampening field that mitigates telepathic and telekinetic attacks to some degree, which really helped him out to be absolutely terrible. Reed Richards of Earth 5012 eventually found a way to send this Tony Stark to the 616 universe, where he faced the 616 Fantastic Four and eventually the New Avengers, showing just how powerful this evil Iron Man actually is, and making us thank our stars that normal Tony Stark is a good guy. Number 4. Iron Lantern. The Amalgam Universe combined the world's two biggest comic book companies, DC and Marvel Comics, during a time of utmost peace and prosperity. Just kidding, this was in the 90s. This crazy event pitted popular characters from both sides against each other and even fused some characters together. One incredibly cool amalgamation would be between Iron Man and Green Lantern. Harold Stark, HAL for short, was the founder of Stark Aircraft, and while test flying a prototype aircraft, it suddenly took off on its own to a crashed alien spaceship, and it crashed itself yards away. The crash left shards of metal in Stark's chest, which after meeting the dying alien, Roman Sur, Stark survived using an alien battery that suspiciously was in the shape of a lantern to build a suit of armor. This armor not only kept him alive though, it gave him the ability to create green, solid energy constructs, fire plasma bolts, fly at speeds beyond the speed of light, time travel, and it granted him almost unlimited telepathic powers. He also had translation of virtually any language, force field generation, and the ever classic superhuman strength and durability. Yeah, he'll put his hand on your chest, like this. He'll go, stop. And then he'll fire a little repulsor beam out. Number 3, Iron Man and Doctor Strange. So it turns out that Tony Stark is a good fit to become the Sorcerer Supreme, and honestly, when you think about the intelligence of the guy, it makes a decent amount of sense. In What If issue number 113 from 1998, Tony Stark and Stephen Strange meet at a party, and after leaving together, Tony is the one driving when they get into the car crash that would normally ruin Strange's hands. Where in the normal continuity, Stephen has to deal with his hands relatively relatively alone. In this What If, it leads Tony on a journey fueled by guilt to try and repair Strange's hands. Eventually, it leads him to the Ancient One, which in turn leads to him becoming the master of the mystic arts, learning how to infuse his tech and armor with magic to create a much more capable hero. As for Steven though, he becomes almost like Baron Mordo and betrays Stark to Dormammu. Luckily, this is in the list of better Stephen Strange alternates. Number 2, all new X-Men Annual number 1. But just to hammer home the idea that Stark would make a great Sorcerer Supreme, we actually have more than one alternate reality where this takes place. The second one I want to talk about today would be an all new X-Men Annual number 1 from 2014. This story showed us Iron Man from the temporary reality number of 591. Tony in this reality brought together the Avengers to permanently end the threat of Thanos on the universe, which resulted in the alien races of said universe rewarding the Earth and its heroes with advanced alien technology, turning the Earth into a utopia. Tony himself would start to lean more into his mystical side with all the extra time he had after saving the universe, eventually becoming the Sorcerer Supreme and being able to solve further conflicts without needing any kind of real fighting. Now, last I've seen, this Tony was living youthfully comfortable at 126 years old. There are even more versions of Sorcerer Tonys out in the multiverse, but you can go find them yourself, because I'm done. After this number 1 point, Robert Downey Jr. Look, we can talk about magical Iron Mans all day, but nothing can really stand up to the closest thing we got to a real Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony Stark was the whole groundwork for the MCU, and his character endured for years. Taking aspects of the original character and adding some realism and a really likable performance made for a version of Iron Man that boosted up not only the comic book character's popularity, but through the MCU, it boosted up the popularity of comic books in general, and for us here at Top 10 Nerd, that is quite a statement. Being in a world that is a bit more grounded and relatable to our own, this Iron Man doesn't have as complex of a story, nor is he more powerful as his comic book counterpart, but he is more than impressive enough without that. Not to mention, he was the one to actually defeat Thanos in the end. His send-off from the MCU affected people who don't even read comic books, and I think that says a lot. Number 10, intelligent design god Hulk. What if Planet Hulk? Most comic book readers, and especially fans of Marvel and the Hulk specifically, know of the storyline where the Illuminati banished the Hulk from Earth to send him to another planet. He ended up crash landing on Sakaar and becoming a gladiator turned liberator turned ruler of the planet until his ship self-destructed, taking out his family and bringing him back to Earth with a vengeance that no guilty person was safe from. What if Planet Hulk ends up asking the question, what if the Illuminati's banishment had hit its original target? In this story, Hulk lands on an incredibly peaceful and serene planet instead of Sakaar. And sure, he goes a bit ragey at first, but he eventually realizes the planet is inhabited by a race of peaceful creatures. Over long periods of time, the Hulk helps this race to evolve and become a thriving civilization. They end up viewing the Hulk as their god, and he basically acts as one that leads them to wealth and prosperity. It's one of the few Hulk stories that doesn't end in tears, and I'm more than happy to talk about it for that reason alone. Number 9, Dark Claw. So, what happens if you take Logan Howlett and Bruce Wayne and just mash them up together? You subtract Robbins, add some Canada, carry the 2, and you'll find you get Logan Wayne. This awesome character is from the Amalgam universe of Earth 9602. Now obviously, Bruce Wayne has no actual powers of his own unless you count his undeniable skill. So most of the abilities belonging to Logan Wayne come from his Wolverine half. A massively powerful regenerative healing factor, slowed aging, superhuman senses, plus his healing factor and adamantium skeleton allow him to have a degree of super strength. But thanks to his Wayne half of things, Dark Claw is a master detective and master of martial arts, stealth, acrobatics, and intimidation. After he witnessed the passing of his parents, Logan went to live with his uncle up in Alberta, Canada, who then also lost his life to poachers. So yes, it's still as dark as both Bruce and Logan's backstories. He then went to kick it with some nuns and then joined up with the Canadian Air Force. At some point, he joined the Weapon X program and learned of his mutation and gained his claws alongside his incredibly dangerous rival, Creed H. Quinn, who would become a saber-toothed Joker hybrid named Hyena. Logan Wayne would go back to New Gotham City where he decided to avenge his parents' and uncle's deaths by donning the costume and name of Dark Claw. If you like this list so far, make sure to drop a like. And to check out part 1 where we covered 10 more awesome Marvel variants better than the originals. Number 8, Earth Ascani Apocalypse. As some of you may know, Apocalypse and the mutant Nathan Summers, aka Cable, have a lot of history together. When Nathan was a freshly born little bean, he was infected with the techno-organic virus by Apocalypse as a test of his worthiness to become a host for Apocalypse. When the X-Men fought off Apocalypse and recovered Nathan, Cyclops begrudgingly agreed to send Nathan away to the future with the hope of him being cured. Earth 4932, or Earth Ascani, is that future. Taking place in the late 36th century, where Apocalypse ruled the entire Earth, when Nathan arrived, he was immediately cloned just in case he could not be saved. When this Apocalypse found out that Nathan was in the present, he sent out his forces to capture Nathan, but he had actually taken the clone instead. That clone would be raised up by Apocalypse with the hopes of him becoming the next host body for Apocalypse himself. Apocalypse named this clone Strife after a villain who fought him in the modern day, who was actually an adult Strife, which really confuses things, doesn't it? Since his current body had grown old and feeble, Apocalypse raised Strife to be extremely powerful as he planned to transfer his consciousness and power into Strife's body. Now, the real Nathan, who was being raised to be Cable by Jean Grey and Cyclops in this future world, ended up disrupting Apocalypse's plan, with the teenage Cable defeating this old and decrepit Apocalypse in combat. Number 7, Netflix Punisher. We have had 3 movies of debatable quality that have brought Frank Castle, the Punisher, to the screen. And while Ray Stevenson, rest in peace, and Thomas Jane, and I guess Dolph Lundgren did decent jobs as Frank Castle, when Jon Bernthal showed up as the Punisher in the 2nd season of Netflix's acclaimed Daredevil show, he did it better than anyone before him. Or at least for me, he did. It was the most believable version of the Punisher I had ever seen. Bernthal brought fury and intensity at all times, almost to the point of seeming positively insane, especially when compared with the morals of Matt Murdock, Daredevil. His character was also incredibly capable and brutal, as is necessary for the Punisher to even work in real life. When he got his own show in 2017, it brought everything to just a whole different level, telling a conspiracy story that also took a very interesting and pretty real look at PTSD in soldiers, while also bringing the right amount of brutality that you'd expect from a Punisher story. Even my mom liked this show, and she doesn't even read comics. That's the highest praise I know how to give. Number 6, Wagnerine. The Legion of Night comes from a world where Mr. Sinister corrupted the genomes of those who underwent the mutant resurrection protocols on Krakoa. Because of this, Sinister's control over humanity and mutantdom became supreme. One of his experiments was combining the genetics of different mutants to create powerful chimeras to serve him, and it made for some crazy awesome comic book moments. A particularly special project was turning the genes of Nightcrawler into a band of teleporting assassins. But the Legion of Night, while having leadership in the form of Sinister's female clone, Mother Righteous, also had field leaders. One of which was the mutant Banshee possessed by the spirit of variance called Vox Ignis, and the other was Mr. Sinister's favorite Nightcrawler chimera, Wagnerine. Mixing the DNA of both Nightcrawler and Wolverine, Wagnerine, funnily enough, was more of a mix of Laura Kinney, X-23, and Nightcrawler, and she made for an excellent assassin and leader for Mother Righteous once she had been freed from the control of Mr. Sinister. Wagnerine ended up beating the odds and procreated with the Cyclops Nightcrawler, aka Summer Night, to create a golden mutant teleporter who seemingly teleported to a random location immediately after her birth, causing Summer Night to lose control of himself and fall victim to the influence of Sinister once again. Eventually, it was revealed that Mother Righteous had actually taken the child, and when that was revealed to Wagnerine, she defected. Now 900 years later, she was finally able to bring down Mother Righteous and go on to try and live a life with her golden little baby. Number 5, Ultimate Spider-Man. The Ultimate Spider-Man comic run is considered by a lot of people to be one of the absolute best Spider-Man runs ever. Being one of the best things to come from writer Brian Michael Bendis, Ultimate Spider-Man revamped the origin of the Spider-Man character for modern audiences in the 2000s, but also made Peter Parker even younger. The story follows the original story pretty closely, with only minor tweaks and changes that make it even better, like the fixes made to the Clone Saga story, or even the changes made to the Venom symbiote. The Earth 1610 comic book run had one writer at the helm, which really helped to maintain consistency throughout out the story, whereas Earth 616's Amazing Spider-Man carried on for 50 years and had many writers coming in to build the story, unfortunately giving it areas that kind of lacked to some degree. Ultimate Spider-Man took a great idea and then ran with it, building up an incredible cast of characters and injecting a great deal of emotion and heart into the story as it took familiar ideas in crazy new directions. Number 4, Ultimate Loki. Loki Laufeyson in the main Marvel universe is a pretty dastardly devil. He's always got schemes on schemes and is just doing what gods of mischief best, using his sorcery. But he's also somewhat redeemable. The Loki Odinson of Marvel's Ultimate Universe, however, is kind of just a madman, but one with the ability to warp reality. He could retcon history into anything he desired by either creating events that never happened or erasing events as if they never happened. He could create copies of himself, change the color of the skies, render himself near impervious to harm, even from Thor's hammer, and summon armies of monsters. One of the first things this Loki does while a member of the Warriors 3 alongside Thor and their brother Balder is visit his giantess mother, steal the Norn stones, and completely take the life of his brother Balder. He then took on the guise of Baron Zemo during World War II and led an attack on Asgard with frost giants and some super soldier Germans that he created. This got him banished to the room without doors, just like he planned. He was eventually freed from the room, and unlike his brothers who had been reborn as mortal men, Loki was still a god, and an incredibly powerful one. He would be one of the main threats faced by the Ultimates when they formed up, but was eventually depowered by Odin. Number 3, Spider-Man 2099. Instead of getting bitten by a radioactive super spider, Miguel O'Hara's DNA was biologically mixed with a spider's DNA to save his life after he was forcibly hooked on a not far off future substance by his own employer. If that sounds convoluted, well, yeah, but it also sounds right at home in a comic book. Although the process of gaining his powers differed from Peter Parker, Miguel was still granted many of the same abilities at a pretty similar level. One thing that differs largely is Miguel's spider sense. He doesn't have one. Instead, Miguel has advanced super senses similar to someone like Daredevil or Wolverine. Miguel also has some abilities that are just wholly unique to him. For example, he possesses an incredible level of super speed as well as telepathic communication abilities, both of which are really freaking cool. He also has fangs and claws on his fingers and toes that he can use in combat. On top of all those powers though, Miguel is from the year 2099, which means that he naturally has a much more advanced set of technology at his disposal. But it's not just his powers that make him better. The Spider-Man 2099 story is awesome, but you'll have to do the reading to figure that out for yourself. Number 2, Tony Stark Sorcerer Supreme. In all new X-Men Annual Number 1 from 2014, Marvel gave us a version of Tony Stark Iron Man from the temporary reality number of 591. Tony in this reality successfully brought together the Avengers to permanently end the threat of Thanos on the universe. Because of the Avengers accomplishing that insane feat of strength and saving the entire universe from the threat of Thanos, alien races of said universe rewarded the Earth and its heroes with advanced alien technology, allowing the Earth to become a utopia. Tony himself would start to lean more into his mystical side with all the extra time he had after saving the universe, eventually becoming the Sorcerer Supreme and being able to solve further conflicts without needing to do any kind of real fighting. Last I heard, this Tony was living youthfully comfortable at 126 years old. This isn't the only Tony to become the Sorcerer Supreme, but he is certainly one of the most accomplished. Number 1, Earth X Venom. In the alternate future of Earth 999, basically every single person has powers. Things have gone apocalyptic, and in an act of vengeance, the Venom symbiote bonded to the daughter of Peter Parker, May Parker. While her retired and cynical pops ain't too thrilled about it, May does actually have complete control over the symbiote thanks to her advanced and honed spider sense, which was something the symbiote was never expecting to happen. Venom and her father Spider-Man go on to join the superpowered police force and fight crime and supervillain threats together. She eventually, after the death of Death itself, goes on to be recruited by Kang the Conqueror as part of a multiversal team to fight the Apocalypse Twins. In addition to her proportional spider powers, plus the enhanced spider sense, she gains all the usual symbiote powers, plus a few extra, like what seems to be a rudimentary form of telepathy, and it is believed her symbiote could go on to mutate further to gain even more powers, which is a good way for Marvel to say, we can do whatever we want with this character. She's one of the coolest looking versions versions of Venom while also being one of the most capable.
And at 10, T'Challa. In the year 1988, within the hidden nation of Wakanda, T'Chaka, the ruler, cautions his young son T'Challa against venturing beyond their borders, emphasizing the suffering and devastation that exists in the outside world. However, driven by curiosity, T'Challa defies his father's advice one night and ventures to the outskirts of Wakanda. Unbeknownst to him though, the powerful force field that conceals the nation attracts the attention of Yondu Onoda's subordinates, who mistakenly abduct T'Challa due to the cosmic energy emanating from Wakanda's vibranium meteorite. In space, Yondu then reprimands his crew for snatching the wrong person, but decides to welcome T'Challa nonetheless, recognizing his adventurous spirit. Impressed by T'Challa's exploratory nature, Yondu extends an invitation to join the Ravagers and explore the vast expanse of the galaxy. Fast forward 20 years, where T'Challa, now known as Star-Lord, successfully retrieves the orb from its chamber. However, his actions draw the attention of Korra the Pursuer and two Sakarans who are sent by Roman the Accuser to get the artifact. This is just it's from an episode of What If, you know, the MCU animated series on Disney Plus. So if you want the full story along with Thanos and the rest, be sure you watch that episode because it's good, pretty good. And at 9, Guardians 3000. As the ruler of the dwindling Spartax Empire, Star-Lord of Earth 691 found himself leading the remnants of his war fleet. In a critical turn of events, he was summoned by the Guardians of the Galaxy along with the remaining leaders of the Galactic Council to address a grave situation. This involved the human Gina Drake and a temporal anomaly that reset their family, returning them to the beginning of a war they had previously won. Amidst an unexpected ambush orchestrated by the Brotherhood of the Badoon, Star-Lord courageously fought alongside his fellow Guardians, determined to create an opening for their escape. United by their mission, they braved the chaos and danger together, striving to overcome the odds and protecting their cause. He has a pistol capable of conjuring one of the 4 elements, and Peter Quill of this Earth has also mentioned that he inherited his armor, element, gun, and ship when he became Star-Lord. So it could mean that this isn't really an alternate version of Star-Lord, but rather his descendant. Gina Drake also suggests it as they meet Earth 616 Star-Lord, and it's revealed in Guardians 3000 number 6 that Peter was born on Spartax in 2985. And it ain't Lord Starkill. Peter Quill, known as Lord Starkill in his home universe of Earth 25271, was a notorious space pirate and leader of the Ravagers. He had a personal vendetta against Corporal Carol Danvers, the leader of the rival Zeta flight pirates. Thanos the Just was a wise and noble peacekeeper who had hired Quill to retrieve a displaced reality stone from another universe. Quill laid in wait on the planet of Gaia, anticipating the emergence of Dr. Eve and her MIM unit from an ancient temple with the reality stone, and with his trusty element rifle, he skillfully incapacitated both targets from a safe distance and then claimed the stone for himself. During his journey back to the hideout, Quill contacted Thanos, much to the latter's dismay, as he preferred not to be associated with the individuals of Quill's reputation, but upon his return, the hideout was suddenly attacked by the Zetas with assistance from Widower. The Ravagers valiantly fought back, managing to restrain the entire enemy team, but in a controversial move, Lord Starkill proposed selling his nemesis and her crew to Thanos to clear his own name. That's definitely a cutthroat move, and you know what, Quill? I respect it. Those are the kind of go-get-em attitudes we need in space. And it's 7, Gamora. Following the presumed demise of Peter Quill, Gamora donned his mask and assumed the mantle of Star-Lord on Earth TRN-421, taking charge as leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy. The team consisted of Drax, Groot, Rocket, Iron Man, and Charlie-27. Their mission was to confront the formidable Silver Galactus, who had absorbed the power of the Silver Surfer and become even more ravenous than ever before. And at the Forsaken Gates of Asgard, where the gods were absent, the Guardians faced off against their former teammate Vance Astro, who had become the latest Herald of Galactus. Vance deployed an army of Punisher robots to keep the Guardians occupied while his master targeted their base at nowhere. Meanwhile, Quill, who was assumed dead, had cleverly faked his demise and taken on the persona of Major Victory, infiltrating the ranks of the Heralds of Galactus to earn the trust of Silver Galactus. So, damn. And at 6, Nova. Star-Lord and his partner Gamora, both of Earth 94241, were a daring duo with a shared mission to locate the elusive Infinity Stones. Their first successful heist involved stealing the Space Stone from the devastated Nova HQ, which had fallen victim to the Annihilation Wave. Their triumph was short-lived, as they found themselves pursued by the relentless Bacchian clan. In a surprising turn of events, Star-Lord managed to strike a deal with Eve Bacchian, convincing her to purchase the Space Stone in exchange for 3 coveted Nova Stars. sounds like I'm playing Mario Party. Discovering that their goals were aligned, both parties seeking to rid the universe of the Annihilation Wave as well, the Backians allowed Star-Lord and Gamora to join their quest in search of the remaining stones. During their perilous journey, a treacherous betrayal unfolded when their supposed ally Thanos seized the Infinity Stones that they had acquired, and then in the ensuing chaos, a colossal insectoid threat was unleashed, which is pretty freaking nuts and honestly kind of epic. Why would you trust Thanos though? I guess it's an alternate universe, so oh well. Halfway through into number 5, Super Mario. Now this one is kind of a joke, yes, but since Mario was voiced by Chris Pratt in the Super Mario Bros. Movie, technically that makes Mario a Star-Lord variant, right? I mean, a load of Mario games also revolve around stars or include them as some form of currency or whatever the case may be. Super Mario Galaxy revolved around stars quite literally. I mean, like, it was in space. Galaxy kind of needs stars in a galaxy. Luna, who's a character in the series, is a star. Rosalina has the star wand. Mario's main goal in Mario Party is to collect stars, which are highly coveted. He's a Lord of Stars, and given that he's voiced by Chris Pratt, and when in contact with a superstar, Mario gains invulnerability and what is basically celestial adjacent powers, or some would say celestial descendant powers. Yeah, I'm gonna count Super Mario as a Star-Lord variant, okay? And if you want to get mad at me for it, go right ahead. I'm sure plenty of you want to give me a piece of your mind already anyway. In it for Cyborg. After the events on Aveline 4, where Star-Lord's actions inadvertently caused the loss of 350,000 lives while saving millions of others, he couldn't escape the weight of the collateral damage that he had caused. Faced with the gravity of his actions, he made the difficult decision to turn himself in, along with the Fallen One, to the Nova Corps for judgment. The public's opinion of Quill was divided, but he took responsibility for the tragedy. Subsequently, both Star-Lord and the Fallen One had found themselves imprisoned on the notorious intergalactic penitentiary known as the Kiln. It was during this time of confinement that Peter made a significant choice. He opted to undergo his first cybernetic implant, a symbolic gesture of distancing himself from his own humanity, because I mean that's what put him in there in the first place, really. While incarcerated, Peter formed an alliance with Chalk, Gladiator, and Thanos, fearing the immense power of the enigmatic figure known as the Maker. They shared crucial information about her background with Thanos and sought his aid, but the Mad Titan ultimately walked away. But still, he became a cyborg, and that's pretty dope, because, you know, part robot people are awesome, a la Power Rangers Red Ranger. You know, if you know, you know. Getting close to the end, in number 3, Old Man Quill. Prior to Red Skull's rise to power and the downfall of the United States, Star-Lord assumed the role of Emperor within the Spartax Empire. During his time, he entered into a union with Lyssa, who gave birth to their 2 children, Meredith and Jason. Though his responsibilities as Emperor prevented him from joining the Guardians on a critical mission that led to Groot's demise, the decision strained his relationship with the rest of the team. In the aftermath of the rebellion and the subsequent years as Emperor, Star-Lord remained unaware of the events unfolding on Earth. However, everything changed when the colossal Church of Truth launched a brutal assault on his planet, resulting in the tragic loss of his family. So, consumed by grief and despair, Quill lived in seclusion for years, cutting off from the Guardians and the wider universe. Then, a message arrived from the dying Guardians, revealing that Star-Lord represented the last hope to defeat the Church. And I mean like the one that had attacked his planet, not like Cavalry Baptist, you know. But ultimately, in at number 2, Age of Ultron. Star-Lord of Earth 26111 is a valiant member of the Defenders who was enlisted by Tony Stark to safeguard the world from the relentless menace posed by Morgan Le Fay. Alongside his fellow Defenders, he engaged in a fierce battle with Wolverine and the Invisible Woman from an alternate reality, mistakenly believing them to be Skrull imposters. As Tony Stark interrogated the displaced visitors, tragedy struck when Morgan Le Fay launched a devastating assault on New York City. Star-Lord and his fellow Defenders valiantly confronted the Sorceress and her formidable forces. However, their heroic efforts came to a tragic end when Morgan Le Fay orchestrated the cataclysmic nuclear explosion caused by colliding 2 of Stark's helicarriers. So, I mean, yeah, any old man story you know is gonna be messed up. Old Man Logan, Maestro, Spider-Man Reign. And finally, in at number 1, Will Stronghold. That's right, I found a way to shoehorn Sky High into this list, okay? Will Stronghold is the main protagonist and central character of the Disney Channel original movie Sky High. As the offspring of two esteemed superheroes, the Commander and Jetstream, Will carries the weight of their legacy on his shoulders. Inheriting his father's incredible strength and his mother's ability to soar through the skies, Will proved to be quite the formidable student at Sky High. But he doesn't start off with powers. So he's the only kid at a school full of the children of superheroes and villains alike to not have any superpowers, despite having two superhero parents who are literally the most famous people on the planet. But over time, Will sheds his shyness and timidness, and he grows more confident and actually gains his powers. Through his journey, he gains popularity as well, but also earns the respect and admiration of his fellow students and even teachers. Will's evolution allows him to stand as a true hero, carving his own path and giving his friends hope, who, by the way, one of them is Danielle Panabaker, who plays Killer Frost on The Flash, but she was playing Poison Ivy in this movie. But the reason I have Will on this list is because the legacy that he's trying to uphold is that of the Commander, played by Kurt Russell, who also played Ego, meaning that within the Marvel multiverse, Will Stronghold is a variant of Star-Lord. You're welcome. I had to do it, okay? I had to. It's true. Will Stronghold is Star-Lord confirmed.
At number 10, we have Cyclops, aka Basilisk. This alternate Cyclops from the Age of X Alpha storyline is so intimidating that you might mistake him for a supervillain. With a backstory so dark, it'll leave you wondering how he didn't become one. It all began at the age of 14 when his powers activated without warning while he was in a movie theater, liquefying 7 people, including his parents. Scott was incarcerated thereafter, eventually being transferred to Alcatraz after the Emergency Power Act rendered the prison a mutants-only facility, where he caught the attention of Arcade, who's got quite the name for a prison governor. It was thanks to Arcade that we get this epic mask, complete with ruby quartz lenses in the eye holes to inhibit Scotty's eye lasers, and a remote control mechanism that has the mask open down the middle, enabling the beams to pass through. In fact, Arcade had Scotty's eyelids surgically removed in order to prevent him from shutting off his eye beams by himself, so that he could use Scott against his will as an method for the other mutant inmates. And after several years of this, Scott managed to get a hold of the remote and blasted his way out of the prison, freeing the remaining mutants and vaporizing Arcade. And before you ask, no, the Basilisk does not turn people to stone with his gaze. He turns them to ash. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. And without further ado, let's get into number 9. Doctor Strange Fate. Ah yes, the good old DC vs Marvel comics. The series that not only pit all of our favorite heroes against one another despite their conflicting franchises, but did so while introducing amalgamations of our favorite heroes and villains. One such hero was the amalgamation of Charles Xavier, Doctor Strange, and DC's Doctor Fate, but as it turns out, this convoluted mashup of a character is more than just a one-hit wonder. See, Strange Fate had discovered that restoring the Marvel and DC universes would result in the destruction of his own amalgam universe, and so he did everything that he could to try and prevent it, which, judging by the fact that you've probably never heard of this dude, was a task that he ultimately failed. However, while he couldn't prevent the destruction of his reality, he decided that he could at least save his own tail, and he did so by infusing his own psyche deep within that of Doctor Strange, where he was able to subtly manipulate the Sorcerer Supreme into creating several cross-dimensional incursions, but ultimately his existence was discovered by Batman and Access. And so, instead of just erasing the dude, Strange decides to preserve the entire amalgam universe within a pocket dimension, thus ensuring that Strange Fate would never be able to menace with the Marvel or DC universes again. At number 8, we have Jean Grey the Conqueror. We all know Marvel just loves to introduce super cool takes on our favorite characters and then proceed to do absolutely nothing with them. I'm looking at you, Galactus Buster Armor, and no missed opportunity makes me as sad as this entry does, cause in the all-new X-Men number 25, we're briefly told about numerous dark realities which don't end very well for our X-Men, including an alternate reality in which Jean Grey was consumed by her inner darkness and went on to conquer the planet by force. You see, a couple realities next door, and Jean Grey ain't the telepathic sweetheart we all know and love, on account of the fact that her early formative years were not spent with Charles Xavier, who was to teach her how to control her powers and to help her mold her persona, thus putting her in touch with her humanity. Instead, the Jean of this Earth listened to Magneto, who taught her how it was a mutant's birthright to conquer, leading her to decide that the reason she was born with her powers was just that. And I don't know about you, but I definitely need the whole story which takes place in this reality. Marvel, if you're listening, get on it. At number 7, we have Professor Drake. Old Man Winter over here proves single-handedly that there is still hope for those of us who can't grow a beard. But who is the Ice Master, you ask? Well, simply put, he's the elderly future version of our favorite Iceman, with a new fitting superhero name to match his wizard-like appearance. See, fashion doesn't get much better in the future, so Ice Master makes do with his cloak. But the most notable difference, besides the beard of course, is how the Ice Master is able to more effectively channel his ice powers thanks to that ice spear of his. Man, if I had $1 for every time I said ice. Ice Master only really comes around when his presence is needed in the past, like that time he came from the future to the present to tell his younger self to give up fighting as it only leads to a dark future. Iceman ain't too convinced and the two even duke it out against one another. But they don't stay at each other's throats for long. In fact, during the second issue of Battle of the Atom, we get to see Iceman across 3 different eras fighting alongside each other. But regardless of which era we're talking about, I'm sure a lot of us can agree that Ice Master is the coolest. Ice cool, that is. At number 6, Planet X Rogue. The version of Rogue we get in Uncanny Avengers is probably the most powerful Rogue we've ever seen, and yes, that includes the countless versions of her imbued with the Phoenix Force. After taking a fatal blow that led me to believe that she expired for like half a dozen issues, she played a crucial role in thwarting off a celestial attack by absorbing the powers of every X-Men and Avenger available. We're talking hundreds of superheroes here, imbuing her with what's basically every superpower at once. And these powers ain't from lackluster players either. We've got some big names here like the Hulk and Wonder Man, just to name a couple. She becomes so insanely powerful that she's able to single-handedly slow Exitar's descent to Earth by pushing up against the bottom of his foot, and when Death Sentry held the other foot, Exitar was halted completely. Like, come on, you don't think that's epic? Sure, she couldn't stop him on her own, but come on, this dude is big enough to size up our entire planet for crying out loud. His shoe size is bigger than Rhode Island. Need I go on? At number 5 is Bloodstorm. This version of Storm from an alternate reality is very similar to her canonical 616 counterpart, save for the fact that she was captured by Count Dracula in an attempt to turn her into his bride. And after becoming the vampiric Bloodstorm, she easily overthrew the Count and helped the X-Men defeat him. However, she ultimately decided not to return to the X-Men on account of her vampirism. She was later imprisoned by some of Dracula's disciples, and while attempting to escape, Monroe was confronted by one of her former teammates, Kitty Pryde, who attacked Bloodstorm as she'd rather see her friend perish than be a vampire. But Kitty hesitated at the last second, falling prey to Bloodstorm as her first victim. There's also a Bloodstorm from an alternate reality in which she was captured by Dracula first before joining the X-Men, where her bloodlust sadly overpowered her, resulting in her taking a big ol' bite of at least both Beast and Professor X. This reality's weather-controlling vampire proves without a doubt that sometimes the best way to improve a character is by adding fangs. At number 4 is Belasco, and no, I'm not talking about the supervillain. I'm talking about the X-Man who became the supervillain in an alternate timeline, that X-Man being Nightcrawler. And if that sounds a bit convoluted, you ain't heard of nothing yet. You see, the events of this timeline closely resemble that of Earth 616. That is until Nightcrawler loses his arm in battle and is forced to teleport to safety. Unfortunately for him, thanks to some Terrigen mist, some weird opposite day stuff is going on as he finds that everyone in the town he's transported himself to are mutants, whereas conversely the Nightcrawler seemed to be stripped of all his mutant powers and appearance, making him stand out as a regular dude among thousands of mutants. Yeah, for once it would have actually paid for Kurt to be blue. Kurt was attacked and slain by the people of the village for being different, because even though everything's different, nothing's really changed. Now, moments away from his own demise, Kurt was approached by the demonic Mephisto, who empowered that bitter voice deep down in Kurt's heart, which always tempted him to believe that those hateful and fearful beings he was sworn to protect were not worth the effort. Now imbued with a deep thirst for revenge against the world for treating him like the monster he appeared to be, Kurt was transformed into a demonic entity imbued with demonic powers and false memories that would perpetuate his unrelenting hatred, and manifesting the spitting image of Belasco, the X-Men's former nemesis. In fact, it was revealed that the Nightcrawler had actually been this reality's Belasco all along, thanks in part to a time loop set in motion by Captain America, who refused to deal with Mephisto and some time travel shenanigans. It's even hinted that Belasco's frequent targeting of the X-Men over the years is actually a subconscious cry for help. So this version of Nightcrawler makes for the perfect evil counterpart, as this pure-hearted X-Men had been compensating for his monstrous appearance with genuine kindness and optimism, doing his best to protect the world that hated him. Yet thanks to Mephisto, Kurt was forced into becoming the very thing he feared the most. At number 3 is Death. What do you get when you merge Wolverine with the Horsemen of the Apocalypse? You get the Eternal Rest itself. During an Avengers event which saw Kang damage the time stream, something he's prone to do at this point, the Avengers were faced with Apocalypse and his 4 horsemen, all of whom bearing uncannily resemblances to our favorite superheroes. We've got a demonic-looking 8-armed, 4-legged Spider-Man as our first horseman, Red Hulk as the Horseman of War, Scarlet Witch with the Black Horse, and finally Wolverine, the Horseman of Eternal Rest. And as for what makes this Wolverine special, aside from the fact that he's permanently fused with a floating horse, is the fact that Wolverine now embodies the very entropy of the universe itself. Well, that is, if he didn't already. At number 2 is the Witness. This alternate reality version of Gambit is himself a temporal anomaly existing at the junction where all timelines converge, thus allowing the Witness to exist at all points in time at once, enabling to perceive everything before it happens, and making for one of the coolest X-Men in the multiverse. Now, being the anomaly that he is, much of his origin is shrouded in mystery. In fact, when Bishop was tasked with gathering as much info on the dude as he could, the only clue we got was him saying, "I am LeBeau." And more than LeBeau, which is about as cryptic as you can get. Now, upon deeper investigation, I discovered that while many assumed the Witness to be an elderly Rami LeBeau, otherwise known as Gambit, it was revealed in the X-Men Future History Messiah War sourcebook, holy cow, what a mouthful, that the Witness was actually a different person altogether, a conclusion that I personally reject. I mean, come on, you're telling me that the Witness, the last guy to ever see the X-Men alive, whose name is LeBeau, isn't actually Gambit? Like, they both even share the same Cajun accent, for crying out loud. Now, this could be explained by a flashback where we see a 6-year-old Remy running into the Witness by chance, who became somewhat of Remy's mentor. But that doesn't really eliminate the possibility of these two being one and the same, since the Witness is a time traveler after all. There's also that time in Gambit issue number 10 when Gambit is on their hunt for a special jewel with temporal properties, an artifact which is revealed to be sent to Gambit backwards through time by the Witness himself. Bishop at one point even refers to the Witness as Gambit to his face, a name that the Witness does not deny owning, instead simply replying by calling Bishop Mon Ami. And if you're still not happy with my anti-canonical reasoning, too bad. At number 1, we have the Rex Dogs. If you've got a problem, let me remind you that this list calls for better X-Men, and if you believe that the universe where anthropomorphic canines exist in the place of humans is somehow inferior to the X-Men, then you must be a cat person. You see, the Rex Dogs are leagues better than their human counterparts on numerous fronts. Firstly, the original X-Men are prone to fight amongst themselves, like how Wolverine and Cyclops stick together about as well as two repelling magnets, whereas the Rex Dogs take loyalty to a whole new level. In terms of combat, the X-Men are strictly known for their heroic accomplishments, while on the other hand, not only are the Rex Dogs unafraid of getting their paws dirty, they're also adorable while doing it. Guys, let's face it, it's hard not to love these mutant doggies. The only thing that the X-Men have on the Rex Dogs is opposable thumbs, which are definitely overrated. I mean, come on, Professor Rex is a disabled telepathic chihuahua, for crying out loud.
Number 10, we have Jason and Jenny Allen. Now, if you're not familiar with this pair of twins, don't fret too much because there is little information about them out there. However, their control over the emotional electromagnetic spectrum makes them incredibly interesting, and that is why I included them on this list today. We get introduced to them in the Justice League Legacy storyline that takes place in an alternate future where the children of the Justice League fight off the darkness, a large mass of pure negativity that possesses the Justice League and causes the downfall of their world. As the kids of Barry Allen and Jessica Cruz, both Jason and Jenny possess green power rings, making them the Green Lanterns of this timeline. However, what really sets them apart is their ability to create hard-light constructs of different colors despite not possessing those power rings. With both possessing the potential to wield all the colors of the emotional spectrum, Jenny has shown the ability to create yellow, orange, and blue light constructs, and Jason has created red and blue light constructs as well, making them both some of the most adaptable lanterns out there. Now, if you want to check them out for yourself, they appear for the first time in 2017's Justice League Volume 3, number 26. Coming in at number 9, we have Green Lantern from Earth 9. Sometime after the death of the second Atom on Earth 9, we are introduced to a sudden wave of superhuman champions, and among them is the heroine known as the Green Lantern, or Lady of the Lantern. However, her origins are not really known, and there are actually 3 theories on who her secret identity is. The first says that she's the murdered archaeologist Lois Lane, and after her body was dumped in the Atlantic Ocean, she was found by mermaids or angels or something, and was revived and given the powers that she has now. The second states that a pair of twin sisters, one good and one evil, fought a battle over some mystical powers. The good sister won and placed the mystical power in the lantern, and then she dedicated herself to fighting forces that make others suffer. The third and final, and probably the most probable in my opinion, is that she is the sorceress Zatanna, who is sent on a mission by the Dark Circle of Magicians to find the lantern. After many years, when she finally found it, she decided to keep it for herself, and well, the rest is kinda history. Either way, the mystery around her origins makes her all the more interesting, and man, I just really want to know more. Equipped with the Green Lantern, an old Chinese-style lantern suspended from a hook, she possesses the ability to teleport, travel dimensions, and even resurrect the dead for a short period of time so they can carry out any unfinished business before fully passing on. Designed by Dan Jurgen with the intent of creating a unique and very, very old Green Lantern, why not check her out for yourself in 1997's Tangent Comics Green Lantern #1. Coming in at number 8, we have Jade. As the daughter of the original Green Lantern and his foe Thorn, Jennifer Lynn Hayden has the ability to harness the power of the Starheart, which was the main power source of her father's powers. Making her first appearance back in 1983 in All-Star Squadron number 25, she briefly served as Earth 2's Green Lantern after she was given a power ring from Kyle Rayner when she briefly lost her powers. However, they were eventually restored to her during Rayner's brief tenure as the godlike being Ion. Like her father, she is capable of creating green hard-light objects thanks to the star mark on her palm, and she can fly. However, what really sets her apart from other lanterns is that she has no need to recharge her powers thanks to her connection to the Starheart, and she also shares powers with her mother as well. Thanks to these extra powers, she can manipulate plants at her will, and her skin actually contains chlorophyll, allowing her to use photosynthesis like a plant. She met an untimely death at the hands of Alexander Luthor Jr., however, while trying to stop him from tearing the universe into a multiverse, but was eventually resurrected by the Black Lantern Corps during the Blackest Night, and that kind of led to her being killed again by Kyle Rayner by blowing her head off. Check out her origins for yourself, and well, why not let me know what you think in the comments below. Number 7, Harold Jordan, aka the Power Ring. Hailing from Earth 3, a universe where the morality of most heroes and villains are flipped, we have Harold Jordan, a feeble and cowardly man who worked as a janitor at Ferris Aircraft. Wielding the Ring of Volthoom, a ring that feeds off his fear and panic instead of willpower, Harold was an incredibly powerful crime lord and a member of the crime syndicate. Giving him powers similar to all other lanterns, he had the ability to create hard-like constructs. However, there was one major drawback that he realized during his time with the syndicate. He realized that although the ring was giving him the power he had always dreamed of, it was slowly killing him, and he could never summon the courage or will to remove it himself thanks to his cowardice nature. During a fight with the Injustice League, Harold is finally freed from the ring. However, it did cost him his life as he had his arm ripped clean off his body by Sinestro. Although he physically died, his consciousness was actually transferred to the Green Realm, a world made completely out of concentrated fear, and he still lives on to this day, holding on to the hope that his world can one day be saved. Making his first appearance in 2013's Justice League Volume 2 number 23 as part of the New 52 DC Universe, why not give his story a read for yourself? Number 6, Jessica Cruz. During the crime syndicate's rule on Prime Earth, Jessica Cruz is unwillingly and forcefully chosen to be the next and final wielder of the Ring of Volthoom thanks to her PTSD and debilitating anxiety. Completely under control of the ring, she was forced to attack her hometown, but thanks to Batman and the other Justice League and all their kind words, she was able to overcome the power of the ring and take control fully. Under the tutelage of Hal Jordan, she was fully taught how to control her ring and eventually mastered the use of it. Unfortunately, killed by the Black Racer during the events of the Darkseid War after jumping in the path of the Black Racer to save the Flash, she was freed from the Power Ring's control as it was completely destroyed alongside her. Impressed by her ability to overcome fear, she was then tracked down, resurrected, and given a Green Lantern ring, making her the Earth's newest Green Lantern alongside her soon-to-be crime-fighting partner, Simon Vaz. Now, the two didn't always get along. However, after being forced to work together after Hal merged their power battery into one, the two did learn to accept each other's differences and work together after many close calls. Check out Jessica Cruz as Power Ring and the Green Lantern for yourself, starting with 2014's Justice League Volume 2, number 30.
Number 5, Vampire Batman. In the Elseworlds Batman and Dracula trilogy, Batman goes up against vampires who have turned Gotham into their home, and then eventually he goes up against Dracula himself. In the first novel, Red Rain, the hero wipes out the vampires and Dracula, although he is transformed into a vampire himself, which means we get to see Batman take on crime using the powers of a vampire in the very next novel, Bloodstorm. He does his bestest to resist the darker aspects of being a vampire, but that all goes kaput when Batman lashes out and drains the Joker after the Joker de-lifed Catwoman. Now, Batman has Alfred and Gordon stake him, putting Batman into a catatonic state. A state that he was then revived from in the third book, Crimson Mist, when criminals took over Gotham in his absence. But he is almost completely animalistic now thanks to the isolation. A bloodthirsty vampire Batman quickly wipes out most of his enemies in a very brutal form, draining them in the process until he is finally put to rest by Alfred, Commissioner Gordon, Two-Face, and Killer Croc, who all go with him to the grave. Number 4, Strange Visitor Superman. Another Superman. I know, but okay, before we start, technically, this Superman is not canon, but he is truly one of the more powerful versions of the character ever. In the story, Superman outlives everything in the universe, living for literally billions and billions and billions of years. He lives so long and gets so powerful that he gains new abilities like being able to split into thousands of copies that allow the hero to do what he does best throughout the universe at the same time. He outlives all the gods, cosmic entities, mortals, angels, demons, and everything. He watches countless civilizations rise and fall and learns an insane amount of skills like telepathy, which I didn't even know was a skill. He absorbs ridiculous amounts of energy, learns magic and strange sciences through all his copies, and then he reabsorbs them at the end of everything. He can fly faster than the entropic waves of the end of the universe and can manipulate the fabric of reality through sheer strength. Number 3, Nightwing: The New Order. In the year 2028, all-out war between heroes and villains had broke out in the streets of Metropolis. There was countless lost lives and destruction caused by the conflict for days, but after Batman passed away in the conflict, Nightwing activated a device in the war-torn streets of Metropolis that shut off or dampened the superpowers of most of the world, believing it was the best cause of action to save humanity from the dangers of the superpowered population. After this, Dick Grayson began a relationship with Starfire, and together they had a son named Jake. Now, as time went on, Starfire progressively fell out of love with Dick and resented his cause. One day, after Dick had been chosen to lead the new Crusaders division to hunt metahumans, Starfire left Dick without saying a word, forcing him to raise their son alone in Wayne Manor. Now, it turns out, Jake, Nightwing's son, is a metahuman with superpowers, and Nightwing now has to go against everything he previously stood for to save his son from the world that he created. Tell me that's not cool. It's cool. Number 2, Aurora of Themyscira. Comics seem to continuously supply us with things that we never thought we needed. In a moment not likely to ever happen again in the near future, the House of DC and the House of Marvel were friends. They could talk, they could play nice, and to prove that, one of the most beloved moments came in the mid-1990s when these two companies joined forces for a crossover. This took place in the amalgamated world of Earth 9602. On this Earth, it was not Diana Prince who became Wonder Woman. Instead, a meta-mutant child by the name of Aurora was rescued and raised as a princess by the Amazons by Queen Hippolyta, alongside Diana Prince. The two fought alongside each other as they grew up, but when the time came to choose who would be Wonder Woman, Aurora's natural ability to control and harness the forces of weather, plus her Amazonian training, allowed her to secure the victory. She went off to become one hell of a hero when she finally left the island to enter man's world. It's an interesting take on the character, and you should definitely check it out. And finally, in at number 1, Batman of Earth 32. Unexpected is probably how I would describe the Batman from Earth 32. Now, the original Batman of this universe was Bruce Wayne, who also became a Green Lantern, and then flew up into space. When he left the Earth to serve in the Green Lantern Corps, it left the role of Batman open, and who would have guessed that of all the characters, Alexander Luthor would be the one to answer the call? First appearing in Lex Luthor Year of the Villain #1 from November 2019, this Batman was partnered up with Super Martian, which is a cross between a Martian, like Martian Manhunter, and a Kryptonian, like Superman. As you can imagine, they were a powerful combo. They took up a base of operations in what looked like the Batcave, but mixed with the Fortress of Solitude, and were assisted by Fred, their awesome robotic butler. Thanks to having the Martian as his partner, Lex Batman was well acquainted with telepathy, and while it caused him some pretty bad headaches, it was also instrumental in helping deal with the Prime Earth Lex Luthor when he inevitably showed up on this world.
In at number 10, Creed Quinn. Also known as Hyena, this version of the Joker first appeared in Legends of the Dark Claw #1. It was an amalgamation of Sabretooth and the Joker, while also having a name mixing of both Sabretooth, also known as Victor Creed, and Harley Quinn, of course. The interesting thing with this version of the Joker is that it was a shared creation of DC Comics and Marvel Comics, which meant that they had the creative freedom to feature combinations of both DC and Marvel characters. The Hyena fights against his nemesis the Dark Claw, aka Logan Wayne, which is just a composite of Batman and Marvel's Wolverine. Hyena, much like Wayne in this comic book, is a mutant with the ability to rapidly heal injuries. The two were both subjects of the Weapon X program, but the program was an attempt to create living weapons, but Hyena used his enhancements to become a psychopathic killer. Typical Joker. In at number 9, Bloodstorm. In the comic book Batman Bloodstorm, the Joker becomes the leader of a group of vampires after the death of their original leader, Dracula. Taking place on Earth 43, he successfully coordinates his efforts to take control of Gotham's major crime families. Later on, the vampire version of Batman would team up with a werewolf combo of Selina Kyle. Unfortunately, Selina Kyle is killed in the final battle by Joker's vampires, but what's worse is that her death causes Batman to succumb to his own lust for blood. This version of the Joker, in my opinion, not only has kept true to the original, but added a unique twist, making him much cooler. Following Batman fighting his lust for blood, he ultimately gives in, biting the Joker and thus falling victim to his master plan. Now Batman is left tormented by the knowledge that the Joker won their long conflict by driving him to kill. So not only is he damned by Dracula's bite and the Joker's blood now in equal measure, but he also must finally surrender to his vampire side. Death of the family. Scott Snyder had bold ambitions on creating a new Joker, one that was more fitting for modern times. To do so, he took the classic structure of the Joker and just cranked it up to 11, and man oh man was it ever cool. In the Death of the Family comic book, he actually fooled Batman into thinking that he had skinned his friends and forced them to eat their own faces. Plus, while doing so, the Joker appeared wearing his own severed face as a mask. At the dinner table in the Batcave, the Joker had Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Robin, Red Hood, and Damian Wayne all tied up around the table, staring at their own severed faces on a dinner plate. It all turned out to be a cruel joke, but that did not take away from the psychological damage that had been done. Scott Snyder set out to create a terrifying modern take on this villain, and both in style and storylines, he accomplished that goal.
Number 5. Zoom. Making his first appearance in the Flash Secret Files Origins issue 3, Hunter Zolomon, aka Zoom, believed himself to be the true Flash. He was the main enemy of Wally West's Flash, and he took his name and appearance from the original Reverse Flash. Now it all began when he was injured in an attack from Gorilla Grodd. He was left paralyzed from the waist down, so he asked Wally West if he could, use the cosmic treadmill and maybe go back in time and prevent that horrible life-altering event to take place, something like that. But it's not that easy. Wally said he couldn't do it because you can't risk the time stream. But Hunter was so desperate, he broke into the museum and tried to use the treadmill, but this resulted in an explosion that gave him super speed. Going of course by the name Zoom, he believed that Wally West declined to help out because he never experienced loss. He had no idea what he was talking about, I guess. So Hunter took it upon himself to take out Linda Park, Wally's wife. What a horrible way to teach a life lesson. And then in the Flash issue 200, Wally West uses his powers to freeze Zoom and make him repeat the worst day of his life over and over. That's honestly a pretty messed up thing to do, Wally. I mean, it's not very heroic, but we get it. You kind of sound like a villain though. I mean, someone repeating the worst day of their life? Jesus, dude. Just ground them. Make them bored. Number 4, Avery Ho. One of the leading members of the Justice League of China, Avery Ho's Flash made her first appearance in the Flash Volume 5, Issue 3. She got her powers through the Speed Force storm of Central City, and at first she didn't have much control over them at all. She would just constantly vibrate, which sounds like a headache. It sounds like a nightmare, not being able to stop vibrating. Oh my god. She was visited by Barry Allen though, and he taught her how to control that vibrating problem, and then later on, she was brought to Dewan Speed Force Academy to learn even more. When an unknown speedster was killing the current speedsters, Avery was able to warn Barry, and in the end she was one of the lucky ones who got to retain her powers while dealing with Godspeed, who I'll explain later on. Number 3, Black Flash. Making its haunting first appearance in the Flash Volume 2, Issue 138, the Black Flash was said to be seen right before the deaths of Barry Allen and Johnny Quick. Max Mercury had a close call with death, so he too saw it. It's literally the personification of death, and at first it came for Wally West, but instead it took his girlfriend Linda Park into the Speed Force. When it later returned, Wally had backup this time. The only ones that could help were the ones connected to the Speed Force, like Jay Garrick, Max Mercury, Jesse Quick, so on and Danforth. They all joined the battle, and finally Wally was able to defeat the Black Flash. Wally raced it to the end of time to do so. He raced it to a place where death had no meaning, so in turn it just dissipated. Now the title Black Flash was also used when Professor Zoom was in his Black Lantern form. Little fun fact. Number 2, Red Death. An evil fusion of Batman and the Flash. Say no more. Batman was the hero of Gotham City. He had his Robins, the usual story, but slowly as his sidekicks were biting the bullet, Bruce Wayne wanted more power to prevent the next one from happening. But he felt like still he wasn't fast enough. He felt like if he had the Flash's power, he could have done a better job. So he tried. He took out every Flash villain, he took all their weapons, and he used it to fight Barry Allen. Batman used his Batmobile and merged it with the cosmic treadmill, absorbing his powers, and then the Red Death was born. Now at this point, the Red Death was totally fine with killing. And even worse, he was okay with Barry's consciousness living inside of him, telling him to stop. Man, I thought having a song stuck in your head was bad. Imagine Barry Allen. It'd be a nightmare. And finally, number 1, Future Flash. The Flash from the Out of Time storyline made his first appearance, well, last appearance, I guess, in The Flash Volume 4, Issue 30. Now we're talking 20 years into the future, and at this point Barry witnessed the death of Wally West and he felt guilt. He used his powers to go back in time and kill every enemy that was somehow involved in the path leading there. He does this, but eventually he comes into contact with himself, present day Barry Allen. And then Wally also shows up to stop this dark future Barry, so it's one of those weird ones. It's one of those storylines where Future Flash was actually always responsible for the death of Wally 20 years later. You can't change fate, no matter how fast you can run.
Number 10, Earth 5 Shazam. Earth 5, or Earth S, is a simpler, kinder world. A world that is more optimistic. A world where the heroes are seen as such with hardly any faults. Basically, this is the golden age of comics. Specifically, Fawcett Comics. Here, Captain Marvel is the main superhero, which gives the world the name Thunderworld. He and his family, Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel, keep the world safe from everything from the Monster Society to aliens. I'm talking like Shazam is essentially taking the place of Superman as the premier superhero of Earth. This version of Shazam worked together alongside Superman and Overman to recruit the Supermen of the universe. They all worked together, led by Captain Marvel, to defeat Ultraman and weaken Mandrak, who was killed by the Green Lanterns. Number 9, Red Sun Batman. The Batman appearing in one of the greatest Superman stories ever, Red Sun, is not some crazy powerful amalgamation of characters. In fact, I'd say he's considerably weaker than a number of alternate Batman, but he is still Batman. In this dystopian Earth 30, where Superman became a tool of Stalin and his Soviet Union, Batman has become the most wanted man in Russia. As an adult, he became a blight on the Soviets and terrorized them all for revenge on Pyotr Rozlov, the captain of the police who brought the demise of Bruce's parents. He became an idol for those who wanted to oppose Superman and his regime. Eventually, Rozlov turned on Superman and convinced Batman to take down Superman. So, he stole Wonder Woman and bound her with her own lasso and drew Superman into a trap where he then bombarded the hero with simulated red sunlight. He forced the weakened Superman into a cellar to lock him away forever. But alas, Wonder Woman managed to destroy her lasso and remove the generator powering up the lamps, and unwilling to be locked up and lobotomized, Batman detonated a little boom boom that he'd implanted within his own small intestine. But before he passed away, Batman revealed to Superman the truth of Rozlov's treachery and got his revenge in a really roundabout way. Number 8, Flashpoint Cyborg. When Barry Allen Flash goes back in time to try and save his mom, he royally messes with the timeline, pretty much changing the whole DC universe. In this newly created timeline, Cyborg is America's greatest hero in place of Superman, based out of Detroit. He's the guy, but obviously he doesn't inspire the same kind of confidence as the Man of Steel because that would just be preposterous. When the Amazons and the Atlanteans go to war, Cyborg tries to gather a group of Earth's superhumans to help stop the conflict in its tracks, but it has already ravaged half of Europe. Thanks to Thomas Wayne, this timeline's Batman, refusing to join up, nobody else wants to join this group either. But then, superstar Barry Allen shows up and convinces Wayne otherwise, and the three set off to gather together an army of heroes. And they do, and it's awesome. Number 7, Dead Earth. Now, I'm not sure what the general consensus on this comic is, and quite frankly, I don't really care because I think this version of Diana of Themyscira is just absolutely insanely awesome. The comic picks up in an apocalyptic wasteland in what used to be Gotham City. Deep down in the remnants of what used to be the Batcave, Wonder Woman had been kept alive in a containment unit and was awoken by a group of humans who were running from a mutated monster known as a Hydra. After saving the humans and liberating their city, she journeys to Themyscira only to find out that the Hydra are actually her fellow Amazons mutated by atomic radiation after the Amazons had decided to go to war with the rest of humanity who had driven the Earth to its breaking point. The world had bombarded Themyscira with nuclear fire, even though Diana used the absolute limits of her abilities to try and stop that. When Superman, who fought for humanity, turned up to try and explain why he couldn't have helped Wonder Woman, we see just how powerful this Wonder Woman is. Losing complete control of herself, Wonder Woman and Superman fought fought each other to the point of causing a great fire that plunged the world into the apocalypse. And at the end of that fight, Wonder Woman, who was double fisting some kryptonite, brought Superman to his final rest with a hole straight through his chest. She collapsed from exhaustion and forgot everything. So when she learned of this past, Wonder Woman decided to set things right and protected what was left of humanity from what she once called her sisters. Number 6, Injustice Superman. The Superman of the Injustice universe has pretty much the same history as the baseline Superman. But when the Joker kidnaps the pregnant Lois Lane, it lures Superman into a trap of fear gas. In this fear-induced state, Superman hallucinates that his wife is the villain Doomsday and instantly attacks her, flying Lois and what would have been John Kent into space, taking both their lives and also inadvertently causing a nuclear detonation to destroy his city, Metropolis. After losing his city, his wife, and his baby, Superman goes into a pretty understandable rage, bursting into the interrogation room where Batman is learning the true intentions of the Joker, and he just plunges his super fist straight through that clown's chest. Following these events, Superman takes control of the entire Earth and rules it as a tyrant. He turns on and destroys his friends, is manipulated by Wonder Woman of all people, holds nothing back, and puts the entire Earth under the control of his regime. He is a seriously hardcore version of Superman who has actually been revisited recently in John Kent's comic book story, where he even took the life of Earth 3's Ultraman very easily. It was kinda nuts. Now you may be wondering, how is this guy better than the original? He's not really. It's not the character himself that's better, it's more like the entire story as a whole is just really interesting and compelling, making it awesome to learn more and more about this evil version of Superman.
Number 10, Jay Garrick. He made his first debut back in Flash Comics issue 1. He was the first Flash, so we figured we gotta start with him. He rocks the blue pants and the red top with a lightning bolt. Classic look, but the thing that stands out the most with Jay is probably his winged hat, Hermes' helmet. He's got super speed and pinpoint accuracy with a helmet. He'll throw a helmet at your kneecaps if he can't catch you. This dude is a badass. He wasn't on a god level like some of these other versions that I'll mention, but he could run at the speed of sound, which back in the 40s, that was quite impressive. Jay went to Midwestern University in Keystone City, majoring in both chemistry and physics, but when an experiment to purify water went south, these fumes knocked him out for a whole week. During that beauty sleep, Jay's body rejected nutrients and his metabolism increased greatly. When he did finally wake up, his new powers got him a spot on the Justice Society of America while remaining a scientist. He's getting it done, heroic way and in the nerdy way. We love him. Number 9, Barry Allen. One of the most popular versions of The Flash, of course, has got to be Barry Allen. He made his first appearance in Showcase issue 4. When he was just a child, his mother was sadly killed and his father was convicted of the crime. Barry was so determined to prove his father's innocence, so he went to school at Sun City University, receiving a major in organic chemistry and a minor in criminology. As an adult, he moved to a Central City apartment and began dating Iris West, a reporter from Picture News. An electrical storm hit one night when Barry was working on an experiment when a bolt of lightning hit him while shattering a cabinet full of chemicals. Now this resulted in Barry being now the fastest man alive, and he tried to hail a taxi, but when he ran after it, he was much further than he intended on going. Pretty sweet discovery. He used his power to save Iris West from a stray bullet, and after that point he knew he had to do more. The first villain Barry ever went toe-to-toe with, ironically, was the Turtle Man. Barry wasn't used to controlling these speeds yet, so he would just keep whizzing by him in random directions. It was actually pretty stressful. The Turtle guy did not bad. Slowest guy on Earth versus the fastest guy on Earth, and somehow it came close. He was in a rowboat and he's like, "Can't catch me, Barry." He's like, "I can't." And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It helps us out so much here on the channel. You guys are the best. Now let's get right back to this list. Number 8, Wally West. So after Barry Allen sacrificed his life in the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline back in 1985, it was Wally West who stepped up to take on the Flash mantle next. He popped up for the first time in the Flash issue 110. He was born in Blue Valley, Nebraska, and he grew up daydreaming about being the Flash one day. So when his Aunt Iris was dating Barry Allen, like the Flash that he dreamt of being, it was like a dream come true. It was like meeting your idol. He was in Barry's apartment and the chemical cabinet was the exact same as how when Barry got his powers, so Wally just had to ask about it. Well, it turns out the weather was also the exact same on this night because Wally wished that he would become the Flash, and it happened. Lightning hit, creating another speedster. That's pretty encouraging. I'm just gonna go hang out near my medicine cabinet next time there's a storm. Just wait. Number 7, Leah Nelson. Earth 9's version of the Flash is one of the most powerful and popular. Double whammy. She's actually the second most recognized person on the planet, despite traveling at blink and you'll miss it speeds. She made her first appearance in Tangent Comics Flash issue 1 back in 1997, created by Dan Jurgens, Todd DeGazzo, and Gary Frank. Now, Leah was famous since birth, not because of her whole abilities, but because her parents were the first astronauts to go on the Jupiter mission. Once Leah grew up and learned how to control these abilities, she took on the alias The Flash, but still wasn't sure if she was loved by the public because of her abilities or just because of who her parents are. Kind of like a Kardashian. She joined the Secret Six later on, but her main goal was to get rid of that world's Harvey Dent, aka Evil Superman. She even got Wally West to help join the fight in Tangent Superman Reign issue 1. Leah is made of light, like literally she could control and manipulate light, but perhaps one of the best features is that she's an amazing actor, like that would definitely come in handy. During Countdown Arena issue 1, Leah pretended to be a damsel in distress to manipulate Jay Garrick of Earth 2. So many skills. I love it. Number 6, Kingdom Come Flash. On our last list, we were breaking down 10 different versions of Superman, so if you haven't checked that out, do so after this video. It should be somewhere over there. But in it, of course, we mentioned the Kingdom Come storyline. In the Flash of Earth 22, Wally West was the father of Kid Flash and a member of the Justice League. So after Superman had retired, he took his job into overdrive. He was sprinting crime scene to crime scene, just a constant force. You couldn't even have a conversation with the guy. He was that busy. Lots to do now that Supes is gone. I mean, more than fair. The Kingdom Come storyline is one of the most compelling for our characters, especially because the Flash couldn't stop. He didn't have a choice to retire. He had a daughter in this reality as well, named Kid Flash, so he was busy.
Number 5, Helena Wayne. While Helena Wayne might not even exist in the main continuity, at least not yet, although she's definitely been there before, that hasn't held her back from being one of the most extraordinary and capable Bat family members from the multiverse. On Earth 2, or one of the Earth 2s, because there's kind of 2 Earth 2s, Helena ends up taking up the mantle of her father, becoming the new Batman. She wears colors similar to Batwoman, red and black, but decides to keep the mantle as is, as opposed to changing it to match her own gender identity. Helena lives up to the name too, and while we don't get to see too much of her in terms of her capability, just knowing Helena Wayne from the comics and from both Earth 2s, I can imagine she would not only do her father proud, but also potentially end up surpassing him in terms of her capabilities, having learned herself from the best. This version of Helena also trained under Bruce as his Robin and was there with him when he died, doing her best to defend her father before the building that he was in exploded. Number 4, Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson was Batman's first Robin and would end up taking up the mantle of Batman after Bruce Wayne's supposed death at the hands of Darkseid. In reality, Batman wasn't dead, but had simply kind of been blasted through time. Dick did such a good job with the mantle that even when Batman was revealed to have survived the events of Final Crisis and he returned, he actually didn't make Dick hang up the cape and cowl. Instead, in the one-shot Batman the Return, Bruce asks Dick to stay on and operate as Batman in Gotham in his stead, while he heads out to manage Batman Incorporated, which was pretty cool. I feel like you know you did a good job as Batman when you get the stamp of approval from Bruce, which is definitely what Dick got as Batman and what Damian got working as Grayson's Robin. And you definitely are considered to be trusted when Bruce gives you Gotham to look after, which is definitely the city closest to his own heart. Number 3, Superman. When Superman ended up swapping powers or lack thereof with Batman in 2003's Superman/Batman, Superman proved to be the one who was better. Batman with Superman's powers ended up kinda losing his grip on reality. He believed that he could hear his parents' voices and became super violent in his fight for justice. The other heroes of Earth attempted to convince Batman to swap back his powers with Clark and let him help them, but he refused. In the end, it was up to Superman as Batman to stop him, which, even without powers, he did. He ended up luring him back to Earth and employing the help of fellow colleague, friend, and hero Zatanna. While Zatanna is the one behind luring Batman to Earth with illusions of his parents and is the one who reverses the swap, in the end even Bruce admits that Superman did a great job as him, suggesting that the swap was about more than powers, as Superman behaved and acted just as Bruce would have in his position, and did whatever it took, putting himself in danger to ensure the world was safe. Number 2, Batman 1 Million. Batman 1 Million is of course from the future, way in the future. He hails from the alternate future known as DC 1 Million, coming from year 85,300. That's right, 85,000 1,300. What a year. There he guards the galaxy's most dangerous criminals who are held within a prison on Pluto. This Batman's identity is unknown to us, but we do know a bit of his backstory. He was one of the thousands of victims who was forced as a kid to watch the death of his parents at the hands of villain Zaron. While others were driven to madness or took their own life, this hero instead was inspired to make sure an act like this never happened again, taking up the mantle of Batman. Batman 1 Million, being from the future, has a unique physiology which grants him superhuman abilities such as telepathy. He also has future tech and off-the-charts IQ of over 1,000, not actually possible if you know how IQs work, and was one of the heroes who helped to save the Earth from the traitor Starman and the plague that he had unleashed. Number 1. Terry McGinnis. What would this list be without Terry McGinnis? As Batman's direct protege in the future, Terry definitely deserves our number 1 spot, I think. He also was designed to be the next Batman, and so not only has the training and experience needed, learning from an older and wiser Bruce Wayne himself, but also genetically was made to become the best Batman possible. In fact, you could even argue, because he grew up with his parents still alive, that he might be a more whole Batman. Terry was the product of Project Batman Beyond, headed by Amanda Waller, who actually snuck Bruce Wayne's DNA into his conception with nanotech that would basically rewrite Terry's dad's genetic code to match Bruce's, making Terry, in a weird way, kinda Bruce's son / half clone. Waller hired Phantasm, aka Andrea Beaumont, to then kill Terry's parents after they left the movie theater with their son, trying to also orchestrate the same origin story for Terry to help motivate him to become a hero. However, in the end, Andrea refused to go through with it, and so Terry got to live his life with his parents, alive. Although it should be noted, his parents did end up getting divorced, giving Terry a different kind of struggle in life. Also, although his father wouldn't end up being assassinated by Beaumont at that time, he would later on die tragically, so still has tragedy in his past. He's a hero. All heroes, I feel like, have tragedy in their past at some point.
At number 10 is Klitzpolik. Just put the name up on the screen, please, because I can't pronounce that. This guy, believe it or not, is actually a descendant of Kal-El. This weird little dude hails from far in the future, around the 67th century to be more specific, but he is immortal, so he's also encountered as far into the future as the 853rd century. He is also known to be a 5th dimensional being, which means that he can explore dimensions beyond the understanding of any normal humans, including myself. I don't get it. And I'm not alone. Most heroes wouldn't even understand it either. He has all the classic Kryptonian powers, but due to his bloodline including genes from a whole other race of superpowered beings, this future version of Superman also has 5D vision, which means that he can share his thoughts with others in real time, among other things. And he uses a weapon called the Hyperpoon, which is a hilarious name for a weapon that functions beyond the means of our comprehension. It's basically just more 5D stuff. At number 9 is Super Batman. Not much is known about this guy other than that he was at one point part of the Superman Squad. He is known as a mixture of 2 different heroic traditions, having descended from both the Superman and Batman families. Of course, he wears a uniform that marries the designs of both Batman and Superman costumes, and seems to have a combination of the 2 heroes' strengths as well. Sometime in the future, this guy is formed, and even though there's little known about him, I put him on the list because a hybrid of Superman and Batman must be pretty powerful to some crazy degree we would never understand. At number 8 is Superman Secundus. In the DC 1 Million timeline, Superman Secundus is explained to be Superman Prime's direct heir, having founded the Superman dynasty and successfully fighting off the Tyrant's son, as well as Solaris, among others. Then in All-Star Superman, another future Superman named Superman 2 appears, who seems to just be the same version of the hero as Superman Secundus, just in a different iteration. This future stuff gets a little bit complicated, but this future Superman seems pretty powerful, and since he's known to be the son of Superman Prime, I felt I just needed to throw him on the list. At number 7, we've got Connor Kent, or FKA Superboy. This future version of Superman is pretty unique in that he's actually a clone of both Superman and Lex Luthor. He spends his youth in fear that he'll turn out more like Lex Luthor in all the worst ways, and unfortunately that's actually what happens. As Connor grows up into a more mature hero, he gains a reputation as a brutal version of Superman who uses extreme force against his enemies with little to no remorse. But later on during the Infinite Crisis storyline, we learn that this future Connor Kent is actually a clone of an early version of himself, which is a relief to him but doesn't make much sense. Does it make sense? I don't know. Anyway, he's not Lex Luthor, at least. At number 6, we have Adam Ken Plus 477 SPMN. The future is horrible at coming up with names apparently, but anyway, this future version of Superman is pretty cool because he kind of comes across as so futuristic that he's actually a much more complex being, but also a sort of simpler and stripped down being than Superman is now in a weird way, which is how it seems like the future would actually be if you went forward far enough. In Superman number 400, we see a future where Superman has died and his descendants have reproduced with humans, creating a new type of super being. But when they accidentally create a massive vortex in space, one of their leaders, Adam Ken, elects himself to plug it while the rest of them turn themselves into energy for some reason, to protect themselves. Anyway, the plan works and the vortex is mended, leaving only Adam Ken, we'll just call him Adam, leaving Adam as the only living being in the universe. So he thinks, until he meets his Eve.
Kicking off our list at number 10, Spider. We are kicking off the list talking about a Peter Parker variant that's bonded with the Carnage symbiote coming from Earth 15 known as the Spider. This Peter coming from Earth 15 is a much more sadistic version of the Web Swinger. He's also a ginger, so that tells you all you need to know. The Spider claims that he has been sentenced to a total of 67 life sentences in prison for the crimes that he has committed, but of course, to make him just a bit more lovable, he has a great sense of humor, very much like that of Deadpool. It's great if you can look past a lot of the extra creepy factors of his character. The Spider was introduced in Exiles number 12 and was a big part of the reality-saving team featured in it, being a sometimes leader of said team. He was a very interesting take on what most people are used to from Spider-Man, having only like his humor and his leadership to make him genuinely likable. As a Carnage-bonded sociopath, he was pretty powerful, but he nonetheless was sent a one-way ticket to the afterlife with a blast from Firestar in Exiles number 44. Number 9, The Amazing Spider. This version of Spider-Man, similar to the Spider, is also evil, but instead of this being caused by a symbiote, on Earth 11638, it's actually the inclusion of Uncle Ben that makes this character go bad. In this world, Uncle Ben never loses his life, and instead, he helps train Peter Parker with his new spider powers, and eventually even helps him to form Parker Industries. Peter and Uncle Ben end up building a machine that allows Peter to lure other alternate versions of Spider-Man to this reality, where he promptly absorbs their powers to increase his own. It's incredibly evil, but it makes him the most powerful hero on that Earth and eliminates the need for any other hero to even exist. His whole plan came unraveled when he tried to do this to the Spider-Man from Earth 616 though. When faced with our main Spider-Man, the powerful version of Peter loses his life and his soul is sent to hell, where he becomes fused with the spirit of vengeance, becoming the Ghost Rider Spider. And it's incredibly cool. Number 8, Takuya Yamashiro. Instead of being Peter Parker, the Japanese Spider-Man, Supaida-Man, is Takuya Yamashiro, a motocross racer and son of astrophysicist Dr. Hiroshi Yamashiro. Unlike most versions of Spider-Man, Takuya was introduced through a live-action Japanese Spider-Man TV show. With that, his character is, one, really popular, but also differs quite a bit. For starters, his spider powers are a little less powerful due to budget constraints for the show, but to make up for that, he utilizes a whole frickin' mech named Leopardon. He uses Leopardon and his spider abilities to fight the Iron Cross Army, which is a group of suspiciously human-looking aliens from an unnamed world who are led by Professor Monster. Yes, I know it's a dumb name, just let it go. Due to his popularity and just how awesome he is, Takuya has become an official character in the multiverse, coming from Earth 51778, fighting against the Inheritors alongside the Spider Army, and he is set to appear in the second animated Spider-Verse movie, which is gonna be great. Number 7, Peter Parker. Fans of this channel may know the special place that Marvel 1602 has in my heart. Written by Neil Gaiman, the story takes tons of familiar heroes and villains and displaces them into an Elizabethan setting. Our friendly neighborhood Spider, being the face of Marvel, obviously got his own 1602 version. In this world, the orphan Peter was raised by his Scottish uncle Benjamin and his wife until one year on his birthday, Sir Nicholas Fury came to his door. Fury had known Peter's parents and sought Peter to enter into his service, and he became Fury's assistant. Now that alone, a Peter Parker who worked under Nick Fury, is a cool concept. But I think one of my favorite parts about this version of Peter is that he doesn't actually have his spider powers. Throughout the run of the comic, which saw Peter escorting Virginia Dare, visiting the Doctor Strange and Professor X of this world, meeting a ton of royalty, having run-ins with the Hulk, and traveling to the New World, Peter kept almost coming into contact with certain suspicious looking spiders. It wasn't until the last issue of the initial comic when he was finally bit and gained superpowers. Number 6, Spider-Man Noir. Listen here, see? After seeking out sweet vengeance on the criminal known as the Goblin for taking away the life of his Uncle Ben, our young hero Peter Parker goes off to a warehouse to do some investigating. Turns out that there is a spider idol in this warehouse containing thousands of spiders. Once the idol is broken, one of these spiders bites Peter, prompting an incredibly real version of a spider god, who seemingly grants the abilities of a human spider on our hero. He is granted most of the same powers as regular Spider-Man with a bit less strength and a stronger healing factor. He also gains the ability to use organic webbing, which can be gross, but in this time it's cool. Spider-Man Noir may not be the most powerful alternate spider. There are plenty of others who have added abilities, but he has the power of popularity on his side, not to mention a killer look and story that makes him a fan favorite character ever since his introduction. Number 5, Spider-Man 2099. Instead of getting bitten by a radioactive super spider, Miguel O'Hara's DNA was biologically mixed with a spider's DNA to save his life after he was forcibly hooked on a not far off future substance by his employer. If that sounds convoluted, well, yeah, it is, but it also sounds right at home in a comic book. Although the process of gaining his powers differed from Peter Parker, Miguel was still granted some of the same abilities at a pretty similar level. One thing that differs largely is Miguel's spider sense. He doesn't have one. Instead, Miguel has advanced super senses similar to someone like Daredevil. Miguel also has some abilities that are just wholly unique to him. For example, he possesses an incredible level of super speed, as well as telepathic communication abilities, both of which are really cool. He also has fangs and claws on his fingers and toes that he can use in combat, which is still cool, but a little bit freaky. On top of all those powers though, Miguel is from the year 2099, which obviously means that he naturally has a much more advanced set of technology at his disposal. But it's not just his powers and technology that make him better. The Spider-Man 2099 story is awesome, but you'll have to do the necessary reading to figure that out for yourself. Number 4, Mayday Parker. First appearing in a What If number 105 from December 1997, Mayday Parker is the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane from a future alternate world. Coming from Earth 982, Mayday Parker becomes Spider-Girl and eventually Spider-Woman, filling in the role that her father once held. Where she is only slightly weaker than Peter in the strength department, she is much more agile, which I didn't even know was possible. Mayday also has a stronger, more precise spider sense, but on top of those advancements, her ability to stick to surfaces is considerably more powerful than Peter's and is actually pretty unique. Wall crawling does not come as naturally to May, and she has to concentrate to stick to surfaces, but she also has the ability to transmit her electrostatic stickiness through surfaces, making everyone and everything else stick to that surface, which is just nuts. What's even cooler is that she can reverse the ability, and instead of stick, she can repel. This adds power to her jumps, but can also be used to repel even people and objects away from her at speed. Mayday is awesome, and I can't wait to see what Marvel does with her going forward. Number 3, Ghost Spider. Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider, is Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker's first love interest, but from the alternate reality of Earth 65. In this reality, Gwen Stacy is bitten by the spider, granting her powers and keeping Peter Parker as some nerd, but also her initial love interest. Gwen was granted superhuman strength, speed, toughened flesh, and pretty much all the spider-based powers that the regular Spider-Man would possess. Where she differs in a pretty big way is that after Gwen was depowered, she instead successfully bonded with the Venom symbiote. Gwen learned to find a very healthy balance with her symbiote. When she first bonded with Venom, thanks to a Matt Murdock version of Kingpin, she was rage-fueled and looking for revenge, but over time she realized that she needed to control that and give Venom better qualities to enhance in order to find balance with the symbiote. So in a way, Venom and Gwen became even greater heroes, helping each other other out. Number 2, Miles Morales. Following the passing of Peter Parker in Marvel's Ultimate Universe, Miles Morales was bitten by an enhanced spider that caused him to pass out and foam at the mouth. When he awoke though, he discovered he had superpowers, and that's pretty cool. Taking on the role of the new Spider-Man, Miles is one of the only characters to fully inhabit the Spider-Man mantle with almost complete support from the fans. Miles Morales is an incredible character. He has his own villains and interpersonal connections to make him wholly his own, but having the Spider-Man name also pulls him into contact with many mainstays of the Spider-Man mythos. He has almost all of the regular Spider abilities plus some amazing powers unique to himself, like his venom, which is like a form of bioelectricity that he can emit from his body. Miles is also able to use a spider camouflage to make his whole body go invisible. Miles was so popular that his character got pulled over to the main Marvel universe after Secret Wars, making him one of the few surviving characters from the Ultimate Universe. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Ultimate Spider-Man. Speaking of the Ultimate Universe, I think it's only fair to talk about that universe's Peter Parker. The Ultimate Spider-Man comic run is considered by a lot of people to be one of the absolute best Spider-Man runs ever. Being one of the best things to come from writer Brian Michael Bendis, Ultimate Spider-Man revamped the origin of the Spider-Man character for modern audiences in the 2000s, but also made Peter Parker even younger. The story follows the original story pretty closely, with only minor tweaks and changes that make it even better or more digestible for younger audiences, like the fixes made to the Clone Saga story or even the changes made to the Venom symbiote. The Earth 1610 comic book run had one writer at the helm, which really helped to maintain consistency throughout the story, whereas Earth 616's Amazing Spider-Man carried on for 50 years and had many writers coming in to build the story, unfortunately giving it areas that lacked to some degree. Ultimate Spider-Man took a great idea and then ran with it, building up an incredible cast of characters and injecting a great deal of emotion and heart into the story as it took familiar ideas in bold new directions. That's why Ultimate Spider-Man is the #1 spot for Spider-Man Alternates who can even attempt to be better than the original. Coming in at number 10 is Superior Spider-Man. This version of Spider-Man is technically not an alternate. He comes from the 616 Earth and fits into the regular Spider-Man continuity, but so many of you guys suggested this Spider-Man, and how am I going to say no to you guys? For those of you who don't know, the Superior Spider-Man is actually Dr. Otto Octavius, but you may have noticed he's decidedly less out of shape, and that's because Otto was able to finally defeat Spider-Man by transferring his consciousness out of his own dying body and placing it into the healthy, superpowered body of Peter Parker. With Peter's consciousness seemingly passing away inside of Otto's body, it's like Freaky Friday, only much more serious and with Spider-Man. You might think that a villain inhabiting the body of Spider-Man would be a bad thing, and in some ways, you are right. Otto was extremely ruthless when using the powers of Spider-Man, but the thing is, he was still operating as a heroic Spider-Man. Inside the body of Spider-Man and sharing all of Peter's memories, Doc Ock had a bit of a change of heart and decided to use his vast intelligence and unrelenting nature, dedicating himself to being a better hero, a superior Spider-Man. Number 9, Spider-Punk. First appearing in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, number 10 from November 2014, Hobart Hobby Brown became Spider-Man when he got bit by a radioactive spider from illegal waste dumping and decided to use his powers to go against the authority. Hell yeah. The President of the United States in this reality is Norman Osborn, who is also still the CEO of Oscorp. Funnily enough, Oscorp in this reality also created Venom, aka VENOM, aka Variable Engagement Neurosensitive Organic Mesh. So, Venom here is created in a lab, like a bioweapon, one that President Osborn gives to his lackeys and dons on himself. So it's an army of Venom-powered soldiers led by a Venom-powered President Norman Osborn. But Spider-Punk also has many of his own followers behind him. Fighting for their beliefs, the Spider Army is a group of punks ready to stand their ground with Spider-Man as their punk rock leader. Unfortunately for Osborn, their Venom is just as weak to sound as the Venom we all know and love. And we are shown this when Spider-Punk plays his electric guitar at full volume, completely blasting away the symbiotes as the two groups clash. He bashed his guitar on Norman's head, defeating him and liberating everyone. It was awesome. Super cool. Number 8, Spooderman. Yes, I am including a poorly drawn version of Spider-Man on this list. Speaking with bad grammar, foul language, and mainly in dirty quotes that I am simply not allowed to utter on YouTube, Spooderman isn't for kids, but he's still a Spider-Man, dammit, and one with cultural impact. Spooderman was created on February 5th, 2011 on MS Paint, I'm pretty sure, and he traveled into the web of the internet, popping up here and there for years. Unfortunately, in the real world, the creator of Spooderman, YouTube channel Jordan Clory, passed away on February 14th, 2022, which was 11 days after Spooderman's 11th birthday. Spooderman is quite self-centered, often going on and on about how he has swag, but he isn't so self-centered as to not come to the aid of the Spider-Verse in the animated Spider-Verse movies. While not a central figure to the story by any means, he is seen briefly while going over the countless versions of Spider-Man throughout the multiverse. Number 7, Spider-Boy. In the world of the Amalgam universe, Peter Parker was the head of the team trying to create a clone of Super Soldier, who is a Superman Captain America amalgamation. The clone used the DNA of Peter, making it technically a clone of Peter Parker, and it had the power to warp gravity. Unfortunately, an explosion took Peter's life and awoke the clone before the time was right. In this universe, General Ross took the clone under his wing, adopting him and naming him Peter in honor of his creator. Peter, Ross, and the General made a pretty happy family until Uncle Jen was then robbed of life by a mugger. This then prompted the clone to go on as Spider-Boy, a cross of both Spider-Man, or even of Ben Reilly if you think about it, from Marvel, and Superboy from DC Comics. Spider-Boy was an instant favorite of the Amalgam universe, but unfortunately, DC and Marvel don't get along like they once did, so we probably won't see him for a very long time. Number 6, House of M's Spider-Man. So this version of Peter Parker, like a lot of other people in the House of M reality, actually had a better life, at least in the beginning. He stopped the robber who would have taken his Uncle Ben's life, so Uncle Ben is still alive, and the two created a version of Parker Industries. Since he stopped the robber, he also had a lucrative career as a wrestler, and then he became a very successful actor, even working with Mary Jane Watson, helping to make her a star actress. Gwen Stacy also never passed away, so Peter and her married and had a child together. The problems really come for this Spider-Man when the mutant-human war finally began. Peter, being so famous as a superhero, was immediately accused of being a mutant, but under the guidance of his Uncle Ben, Peter went along with it, pretending to be a mutant, becoming an idol for mutant children everywhere. A false idol though. It was only a matter of time before he was found out, and then he came under public fire for misrepresenting himself as a mutant for years. A movie he starred in about his life was pulled from theaters, stock in his business began to tank, his family members were forced to seclude themselves in their estate, and the conflict became so bad Peter had to fake his own passing and go into hiding. Number 5. Tom. I remember when I learned that the new Spider-Man who would be swinging into the MCU would be Tom Holland, and while at first I think I and a lot of people were skeptical of anyone who would step into the role of Marvel's #1 hero, Tom really killed it. Coming in for the first time in the MCU's Civil War, not only did we get the coolest intro to Peter himself with Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, but then the guy shows up at the airport battle and the first thing he does is steal Captain America's shield. And then he proceeds to make Falcon and the Winter Soldier look like complete chumps. But then we got a whole trilogy of films, each one knocking it out of the park, and almost followed a backwards approach to the films before it, giving us Peter living life in high school for 2 whole movies before he finally comes into his own at the end of the 3rd film, and now the character can go literally anywhere. I just want to know what's gonna happen next. In at number 4, Andrew. The second person to bring Spider-Man to the big screen, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies were a mixed bag. Some people were not as much of a fan of the Sony-backed films themselves, but almost no one I know had a complaint against Andrew himself or the way he played Spider-Man. Of the actors to play the wall crawler, I think this Spider-Man had some of the best quips, and he also looked freaking sweet. The chemistry between Peter and Gwen Stacy was also incredibly real feeling, which made it all the more emotionally devastating when Peter lost her. The villains of this version of Peter also had a much more genuine connection to the hero than the MCU version of the character. We got to see him create his own web shooters, unlike either of the other live action versions, showing us how smart he actually is, and this version of Peter was a much more believable and likable oddball. If you ask me, the first movie was better than the second, but man, I wish we got a 3rd movie. Number 3, Toby. If we're gonna talk about Tom and Andrew, we need to talk talk about the first one to bring it all to the screen, Tobey Maguire. This version of Spider-Man, and honestly his supporting cast, all gave a life to the character and characters of the Spider-Man mythos that we had never seen before. Peter in this universe is much more dorky. Like, you really believe that this guy is a big old nerd turned superhero. But it also makes him incredibly likable when coupled with how much of a genuine hero he actually is. Not only that, but his connection with Uncle Ben and Aunt May was probably the most real of any live action adaptation, which made it so much more real when Peter lost his uncle. The other thing with the original trilogy of Spider-Man movies is that Peter struggled. His character was constantly trying to make money or keep his relationships afloat, he was struggling to pay rent, and he was taking care of Aunt May, all while trying to balance being a web-swinging superhero who was constantly losing his powers and dealing with his idols always becoming some of the best supervillains to come to movies. Well, at least in the first two movies. Also, we got Bully Maguire, and that's really cool. So, number 2, Pavitr Prabhakar. Pavitr Prabhakar first came to us in Spider-Man India #1 back in January of 2005, and man, is he awesome. As a young poor kid, Pavitr went to live with his Uncle Bim and Aunt Maya in Mumbai. Pavitr was bullied on the regs, and while being chased by other kids one day, he came into contact with an ancient yogi who ended up giving him the power of a spider to fight against evil. While figuring out his powers, Pavitr refused to help a woman being attacked by several men, and this led to the passing of his Uncle Bim at the hands of those men, since Bim tried to help her when Spider-Man wouldn't. And just like that, as with all Spider-Men, Pavitr learned that with great power comes great responsibility. His powers, weaknesses, and pretty much everything else are very similar to Earth 616 Spider-Man, but usually with a bit of a mystical twist given the way in which he received his powers. He has faced villains like Nalin Oberoi, a crime lord who used an amulet to get demonic powers, and Dr. Octopus, who had demon arms that were given to him by Nalin. In the Spider-Verse, he battled alongside Superior Spider-Man, Spider-Man UK, and all his other alternates as one of the best of the bunch. Finally, in at number 1, Ben Reilly. Technically, just like Superior Spider-Man, this alternate Spider-Man isn't an alternate Spider-Man at all. Ben Reilly is a Peter Parker clone from the 616 continuity, but don't think that makes him any less awesome. Ben has all the same powers as Spider-Man with a much darker story. As Scarlet Spider, Ben was a favorite among fans, even outshining Spider-Man himself on a few occasions, but he has gone through so many twists and turns throughout his time. So after being created by a villain known as the Jackal, Ben would be defeated, but in secret he would go into hiding for 5 years, returning to New York as the Scarlet Spider. Ben even stepped into the role of Spider-Man himself during a brief period of time, and at the end of that arc, Ben would lose his life, only to be resurrected and then taken to the afterlife over and over and over again by his creator. This drove him completely insane, driving him to overthrow his creator and become the new Jackal. He eventually went back to being the Scarlet Spider, became Spider-Man again, and now he is the totally awesome Chasm. Number 5, Martian Manhunter. Look, I think it's incredibly easy to overlook Martian Manhunter's incredible capabilities. Yes, he is more well known for being a telepath and a shapeshifter, but this guy packs a hell of a punch with the Martian abilities of phasing, Martian vision, and density alteration. In DC 1 Million, we get a version of John Johns, or John Jones, who leads a war against Darkseid and gets him to surrender to the Source Wall, becoming trapped inside of it. The Source Wall, in return, gave John one wish. His wish was to become one with Mars, meaning John became a living planet while maintaining his multiversal telepathy and his genius level intelligence. Now, we don't get to see much of this version of John, but we can guess a lot of things about this version. Firstly, his weakness to fire is probably non-existent, because I mean, people gotta make fire on a planet, I guess. We can also probably assume John keeps his other Martians' abilities to a degree, and there's also the possibility that the passage of time has increased those natural abilities considering he's defeated Darkseid. We can also assume that he would now also have the powers that usually come with being a living planet, like weather manipulation and control of the elements, and he can control the sands of Mars to an incredible degree, so there's that too. Number 4, Last Night on Earth Joker. In Batman Last Night on Earth by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, Batman, or rather a clone of Batman created by Batman's own resurrection machine, goes out into a post-apocalyptic world completely rocked thanks to Lex Luthor. One of the first things that this new Batman finds, funnily enough, is a lantern with the head of the Joker somehow still alive and speaking inside of it. Kind of like in God of War when Kratos gets the head of Mimir that he just carries around on his hip. Batman takes this Joker lantern as a companion, and this talkative Joker keeps the Dark Knight company as he works to find a way to dethrone Omega, who is a villain that rules over the apocalyptic world using Darkseid's Omega effect. This Joker is strangely friendly and compassionate, and he is honestly a great cheerleader for Batman, which I don't think any of us expected to see. What we really didn't expect to see is that this disembodied head is given a robotic body to become Batman's new Robin. What? Number 3, Kingdom Come Shazam. In an alternate possible future, metahumans or superheroes are now hated. Because of this, Billy Batson hasn't become Shazam in years and is now a full-grown man looking a lot like his alter ego minus the cool costume and cape and powers and all that stuff. He was eventually brainwashed by Lex Luthor into believing that metahumans and even Captain Marvel, who lives inside of him, sort of, are all monsters. In time, Bruce Wayne tries to convince Billy otherwise, which eventually forces him to turn to Shazam once more, breaking open the metahuman prison and starting a massive war that puts the world at risk. Now, after a nuclear device was dropped threatening to take out thousands of people, Superman convinced Billy to help, and Shazam outraced Superman to the device using his lightning to destroy it and sacrificing himself to save both humans and metahumans, ending the hatred against superheroes once and for all in this world. Number 2, Bat Prince. Another alternate version of Batman, I know, but he belongs to probably one of my favorite alternate reality stories to come out of DC Comics, Dark Knights of Steel. This story takes place in a world of medieval fantasy where the Wayne family ruled their kingdom until the mother and father of Superman came to Earth. The L family house became rulers of the land after a horrible attack on the Wayne family. Now, as the surviving son of the Waynes, Bruce serves as both a knight and an adopted son to the L family, with his network of Robins and his super brilliant mind. But as the world is at each other's throats, this Bat Prince learns about the actions that led to his birth and the powers he now possesses as a half-Kryptonian Dark Knight. Dark Knights of Steel that came out last year in 2022 just has so many interesting and fresh takes on classic DC characters. It's fresh and fun and flirty, and I got a variant cover of the first issue and it looks so sweet, and maybe one day I'll get to show you guys. Definitely read Dark Knights of Steel. And finally, into number 1, it's Green Lantern Earth 1. This Green Lantern focused story is one that I actually really like. It brushes over a lot of things very easily, but it made me care about the Green Lanterns, and that's something I didn't think was ever gonna happen. Sorry. It almost feels like a dark sci-fi take on Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns. Essentially, in this story, Hal Jordan is on the moon with a crew of workers who mine for metal when he comes across a crashed alien ship containing the Green Lantern ring, a Green Lantern battery, the corpse of Abin Sur, and a robot called a Manhunter. Hal claimed the ring, just taking it off of the alien corpse, and use it to fight the Manhunter that sprung on him. What had happened is that the Manhunter robots were created by the Guardians of the Universe to take out the Green Lanterns as the Lanterns had grown uncontrollable, and they were pretty successful, but also grew out of control, putting the galaxy in peril and leaving the Green Lantern core broken and spread extremely thin. Hal meets up with an equally inexperienced Kilowog, and they go across the universe trying to rally together any Green Lanterns they can. It all feels like, the best way I saw it described was as if Christopher Nolan and Ridley Scott teamed up and made a Green Lantern story. It does feel like that, and it's just such a cool and fresh take. Number 10, Calvin Ellis. Instead of Kal-El landing on a farm in Kansas, a black Kryptonian named Calvin Ellis was sent to Earth to escape his planet's destruction. Nevertheless, he didn't grow up trying to fit into society, as he instead became very ambitious. What do I mean by that? Well, Calvin Ellis worked hard enough to eventually become the President of the United States, giving him a position that allowed him to better protect his world both politically mentally and physically. He still carried his role as Superman and even became a multiversal hero when he teamed up with the other versions of the character during the Infinite Frontier era. Calvin Ellis gained political power as well as his own incredible Kryptonian abilities, not to mention that he reprogrammed the alien intelligence Brainiac to help him in his duties. He's also a talented boxer. So there's that as well. Number 9, Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going to go back in time to the infamous death of Superman. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. In the Dark Multiverse, however, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she didn't expect to happen was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected. Assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the Dark Multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, Lex Luthor's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman again when he finally does return. The whole story is tragic, but it's also really cool. And to maybe check out part 1 to make sure I didn't miss any of your favorite alternate DC Universe superheroes. Number 8, Batman Who Laughs. While the Batman Who Laughs was Bruce Wayne from Earth -22 of the Dark Multiverse, he basically becomes the most powerful alternate version of the Joker and Batman ever. Everything about this Batman remained relatively the same until the day the Joker found out he was going to pass away, and so he decided to take everyone with him. Joker took down a large number of Batman's rogues gallery, including Catwoman. He caused the passing of Commissioner Gordon, and he paralyzed Batman, forcing the Dark Knight to watch as the Joker took the lives of countless innocent people. Once Batman regained his movement though, he lost it and put the Joker to rest. Now, as his one last sick joke, a toxin in the Joker's heart escaped his body, infecting Batman and turning him into the most terrifying Joker-Batman hybrid you have ever seen. With all the intelligence and physical ability of Batman mixed with the insanity and psychosis of the Joker, the Batman Who Laughs is off the chain. He has a book on how to destroy the multiverse, as well as a real-world comic book that lays out the structure of the universe. He has a pack of metal cards that can warp reality, he has a pack of feral Jokerized Robins, and he can corrupt people to his side with his Joker toxin, like Shazam as an example. He wiped out all the heroes of his universe and several others and put together a squad of evil Batmen who he used to become one of the biggest threats in the multiverse, almost bringing the end of everything. He's not better, but he's cool. Number 7, Furnace. Before the Martians became the Martians, they were an incredibly violent and powerful race called the Burning. The Guardians of the Universe experimented on the Burning and put genetic blocks in place to make them afraid of the fire that they used as their most powerful weapon. That's why Martian Manhunter has a fear of fire. Now, after the Justice League was trapped and taken down in Obsidian Age Atlantis, John Jones blamed himself for his friend's passing because his fear of fire completely overtook him. So, he recruits Scorch to help him overcome his fear, and he would use his telepathy to help her deal with her own problems. Now, unfortunately, in doing this, he also broke the genetic blocks, allowing John to become the incredibly dangerous Furnace, with all of his original powers boosted in potential, especially his telepathy, plus an insane level of pyrokinesis. Number 6, All-Star Superman. All-Star Superman is actually a 12-issue series that sets itself apart from the rest of the DC universe by sort of being a standalone story. At the beginning of the tale, Superman saves an exploration mission to the sun that was sabotaged by Lex Luthor. But because of his overexposure to the yellow sun, he ends up developing new abilities such as the power to harness the bioelectric aura and pushing his normal abilities to unimaginable levels. But it wasn't just his powers that got a boost. His intellect, creativity, imagination, and curiosity also got boosted up to the point that he started getting new skills and trying out new experiments, even some that would allow a successor for himself to be created. That's important because while his abilities and mental acuity had been boosted up, and he even became immune to green kryptonite, the overexposure to the sun also meant he was starting to slowly pass away as his cells became overloaded, causing this story to get really damn emotional.
Coming in at number 5, we have Simon Baz. Mentioned briefly just a little bit ago, let's talk about the former street racer and car thief turned Green Lantern. After the horrible event that occurred at the World Trade Center, Simon and his family found themselves under extreme suspicion due to the color of their skin, leading him to be, bullied for most of his life. Despite these hardships, Simon was able to finish all of his schooling and eventually became an engineer. However, he was fired thanks to a financial crisis, and desperate for money, he turned to the streets and started street racing. One night, he accidentally stole a van full of explosives and a high-speed chase ensued, ending in his arrest due to him being a suspected member in an unrelated attack. Even though Simon pleaded he was innocent, everything he said was ignored, but his will was strong enough to summon a Green Lantern ring, albeit, a defective one, to help him break out of jail. Now possessing the powers of the Green Lantern, Simon was able to track down the true owner of the van and bring him to justice with the help of Agent Fed. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Simon eventually teams up with Jessica Cruz to help keep the Earth safe from any danger that comes his way. But one thing that really sets Simon apart from the other Lanterns is he actually possesses two incredibly rare abilities that few Green Lanterns have. One being Emerald Sight, which allows him to see glimpses of the near future, allowing him to prepare for anything that comes his way, and the other being the ability to heal others through sheer willpower. Something that was, thought to be completely impossible until right then. First appearing in 2012's The New 52 FCDB Special Edition number 1. Give his story a read for yourself, I'm sure you'll all really like it. Number 4, Guy Gardner. From the Prime Earth universe, we're going to be talking about Guy Gardner, the colorblind, ring-swapping Green Lantern of Sector 2814. Estranged from his father and, most of his family after resigning from the Baltimore Police Department, it's needless to say that Gardner has some underlying daddy issues that he will probably never address. After his brother was shot during a drug bust, Guy rushed him to the hospital in hopes of saving his life. However, he wasn't fast enough. But luckily for him, on his way, he was found by a Green Lantern ring thanks to his overwhelming ability to overcome great fear, and that allowed him to get his brother safely to the hospital. As the only Green Lantern on Earth at that time, Guy had a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. However, not everyone was on his side when it was revealed that the Guardians were secretly sabotaging him from behind the scenes. Gardner was eventually asked by Hal Jordan after the battle against the Third Army to go undercover and join the Red Lantern Corps, and in no time he actually became their leader and changes almost everything for the better by keeping everyone and everything safe from Atrocitus and allowing the Red Lanterns to cause only justice-based murders. Later, he once again joins forces with the Green Lanterns to defeat Relic, and Guy and the Red Lanterns are given guardianship over Sector 2814 alongside Simon Baz. Check out his New 52 appearance in 2011's Green Lantern Corps Volume 3 number 1, or if you want to see him in his very first appearance, take a look at 1968's Green Lantern Volume 2 number 59. Number 3, Kyle Rayner. Another Prime Earth inhabitant, Kyle Rayner is the 4th human Green Lantern and one of the most powerful to ever exist, having also been a White Lantern and a host of Parallax and Ion. In addition to his green power ring, Rayner was actually chosen to wield the other 6 rings of the emotional electromagnetic spectrum, making him the hybrid lantern for quite some time, before he was overwhelmed by the sheer power and all his rings, aside from his green and orange ones, were destroyed. During the rise of the Third Army, we see Kyle prepare for a fight with the Guardians of the Universe, and he sets out to master the powers of all the other rings, beginning with the Red of Rage. Later during the events of Lights Out, we see him wield the sheer power of the White Light to protect himself against the Relic. However, this did cause the release of the Relic. After an insane journey and a battle with Relic alongside the other lanterns of every single color, Rayner is able to pull the beast through the source wall, causing them to both disappear, until it was confirmed that Relic transformed into a part of the wall. Thought to be dead, the other lanterns returned to their homes, but the Guardians stuck around to see Kyle emerge from the wall, and after learning how, it all works and where their energy supply comes from, the Guardians decide that the information he knows is much too vital and that Kyle's survival has to be kept a secret. Now, obviously there is so much more to Kyle Rayner's story, seeing that he made his first appearance back in 1994's Green Lantern Volume 3 number 48, so I highly recommend you read it for yourself, or maybe start with his New 52 appearance in 2011's Green Lantern New Guardians number 1 if you're looking for a more recent storyline. Number 2, John Stewart. Following in the footsteps of his predecessor Guy Gardner, John Stewart decided to forego a secret identity as the 3rd Green Lantern of Earth. Once an architect, John was selected by the Guardians of the Universe as Hal Jordan's backup after Guy Gardner was seriously injured. Since his first appearance all the way back in 1971's Green Lantern Volume 2 number 87, we've seen John team up with some of the the most powerful beings in the universe, including the Justice League, Dark Stars, Indigo Tribe, and even the United States Marine Corps. Although Hal was unsure if John was fit to be a Lantern at first because of his attitude toward authority figures, he has since proven himself time and time again to be worthy of the name Green Lantern, having played a massive role in the Sinestro Corps Wars, the War of Light, the Blackest Night, and the War of the Green Lanterns. However, he has had to do some things that have made him doubt his will, the biggest being the times he's had to destroy not one, but 2 worlds for the greater good. Now, if you're not familiar with John Stewart as the Green Lantern, I highly recommend you check out his story for yourself. He was actually the first Green Lantern I had ever heard of, so he does hold a very special place in my heart. And finally, number 1, we have Hal Jordan. Definitely the most well-known version of the Green Lantern, and the most deserving of the number 1 spot in my eyes. Hal Jordan is the first human to ever become a member of the Green Lantern Corps, and has been regarded on multiple occasions as the greatest Green Lantern of all time. For your sake, I won't go too deep into his backstory and all his accomplishments because we could be here for literal days, but I'll do my best to give you the highlights. Before becoming the Green Lantern, Hal was an Air Force pilot and was chosen by a green power ring for his ability to overcome great fear, you know, like all the other Green Lanterns out there, which led him to becoming the Galactic Police Officer of Sector 2814. As one of the founding members of the Justice League, we've seen him take on the likes of pretty much every major villain in the DC Comics universe. One of Hal's most defining moments as a Lantern, and honestly one of my favorite moments in comic book history, was during the Blackest Night, when Hal became the White Lantern. After Necron separates Sinestro from the entity, Hal actually bonds with it and uses its power to transform the resurrected heroes into White Lanterns, dubbing them the White Lantern Corps, and they defeat Necron by reviving the Black Hand, severing Necron's link to the living plane. Basically, he became one of the most powerful beings in the universe and completely annihilated darkness itself. If you want to hear more about Hal Jordan, you know, his origins and all his adventures, please let me know in the comments below, and maybe we'll dedicate an entire video to him. But in the meantime, why not read all about him for yourself, starting with 1959's Showcase number 22.
Coming in at number 10 is The Maker. Despite his heroics in the 616 universe, we got to witness a spectacular fall from grace for the Reed Richards of the Ultimate Comics universe, otherwise known as Earth 1610. The Magneto of this universe unleashed the Ultimatum Wave, which caused a tidal wave that took out thousands of people. That event, combined with the stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal, caused Reed Richards to completely snap and blow up his childhood home. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes and was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. Reed somehow returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker and set out on a twisted quest to make the world his idea of perfect. He destroyed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power and launched an attack on Washington, D.C. The Maker then went on to do a lot of really twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, proving that if not kept in check by a strong moral compass, Mr. Fantastic's amazing mind can be ultimately a source of terror. And now, he's literally recreating the Ultimate Universe by manipulating the timeline of another universe. Number 9, Ghost Spider. Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider, is Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker's first love interest, but from the alternate reality of Earth 65. In this reality, Gwen Stacy is bitten by the spider, granting her powers and keeping Peter Parker as some nerd, but also her initial love interest. Gwen was granted superhuman strength, speed, toughened flesh, and pretty much all the spider-based powers that the regular Spider-Man would possess. Where she differs in a pretty big way is that after Gwen is depowered, she instead successfully bonds with the Venom symbiote. Gwen learned to find a healthy balance with the symbiote. When she first bonded with Venom, thanks to a Matt Murdock version of Kingpin, she was rage-fueled and looking for revenge, but over time, she realized that she needed to control that and give Venom better qualities to enhance in order to find balance with the symbiote. In a way, Venom and Gwen became even greater heroes, helping each other out. Number 8, King Thor. It goes without saying that Thor, Odin's son, being a literal god, has an incredibly long lifespan. His father Odin is millions of years old, and Thor is meant to eventually exceed his dad as the new Allfather. In the alternate timeline of Earth 14412, he successfully does that. During the War of the Realms in this universe, Thor sacrificed his eye to obtain the knowledge to defeat Malekith the Accursed and was made Allfather of Asgard. Now at some point, Thor eventually left Asgard and joined Omnipotent City's Ministry of Interdeity Justice, meaning Thor became a cosmic god cop, preventing wars among various pantheons and arresting gods that broke their godly laws. After spending some time as a sentient planet, assisting Sorcerer Supreme Daemon Hellstrom, surviving in the frozen jungles of Jotunheim, falling in love with a frost giant, and having a few kids, Thor returned to Asgard and inherited the power of the Allfather from Odin, renaming it the Thor Force. It was after all those countless years that Thor's brother Loki instigated the annihilation of all life on Earth, just out of spite. But Thor still carried on, with the loss of his friends and comrades causing Thor to become a stern and cynical ruler, just like Odin was before him. Funnily enough, Wolverine also survived this long as well. I don't know how, but he did. Number 7, General James Howlett. Speaking of Wolverine, in the second volume of Extreme X-Men, joining a team of multi-dimensional mutants that hunt down evil Professor Xaviers across dimensions is a much different version of Wolverine. Hailing from the reality of Earth 12025, this version of our feral mutant is the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada and Viceroy of Her Majesty's expedition to Shangri-La. He is like a version of Wolverine who is also mixed with President Theodore Roosevelt. General James Howlett is an adventurer and hero alongside his partner and lover, the demigod Hercules, or Heracles, however you want to say it. These two shared a love that was built after years and years of working together, and their bond was so strong that Hercules gave James a super cool upgrade in the form of a skeleton made of adamantine, which is a godly golden metal even stronger than adamantium, making Wolverine completely indestructible and immune to telepathic attacks. Unfortunately though, due to the god-on-mortal nature of the relationship, the Greek gods banished the pair to Tartarus, where they basically just fight hordes and hordes of lost and damned souls for 4 years before escaping. Number 6, Doctor Strange Fate. Doctor Strange Fate is the only amalgam character from the DC Marvel Amalgam universe who understood the mashed up nature of said universe, and he also survived its destruction, meaning he survived the alienation of the 2 biggest comic book companies, which is impressive to say the least. With the combined might of 2 magical masters of the mystic arts, Marvel's Doctor Strange and DC's Doctor Fate, combined with a little extra Marvel's Professor X special sauce, Amalgam's Charles Xavier toes the line between hero and villain to protect his universe. After saving Nabu, the Ancient One, Xavier was trained in the mystic and martial arts. In addition to being the world's supreme sorcerer, Strange Fate was also the world's most powerful telepath, putting him at a crazy level of power, and he was even able to sneak into Strange's consciousness and convince Doctor Strange to recreate the Amalgam universe as a pocket dimension. Number 5, Old Man Logan. In the alternate universe where we are introduced to Old Man Logan and Old Man Hawkeye, everything is in shambles. It's an apocalyptic wasteland, and all because the villains, under the leadership of the Red Skull, had coordinated a massive attack on the world's superheroes, leaving only a very, very few alive. Logan himself was tricked into wiping out every single member of the X-Men, and while that is tragic, I do have to say it's incredibly impressive. Impressive or not though, it drove Logan mad with grief and he vowed to become a pacifist. He retired to a quiet farming family life, letting the world go to hell around him. But we need a story, so that cannot fly. Eventually being short on money and needing to help his family, he joins Hawkeye on an adventure across America to deliver a briefcase of super soldier serum. After he goes on this grand adventure, defeats the Red Skull and returns home, the Hulk gang had completely wiped out his family. This is when he finally gets to pop his claws for the first time since the story begins. He wipes out the entire gang and eviscerates the Hulk himself, and then eventually finds his way to the main Marvel universe. Another version of him even gets the powers of Venom as well, which is super cool. Number 4, Age of Apocalypse Nightcrawler. In the Age of Apocalypse, Nightcrawler is very similar to his Earth 616 counterpart, except he's an incredibly capable warrior brandishing dual blades at all times, and he isn't really as lovable as he would be normally. This Nightcrawler hates the church, having had a traumatic experience when he was younger, which is a far cry from the original Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler in this universe is also close to his mother, Mystique, which is why he gladly takes on the Darkholme last name. This Nightcrawler believes his biological father is Sabretooth, since Mystique stated that she had gone to the trouble of, quote, finding a father with fur when Nightcrawler complains he is cold. This version of Nightcrawler actually chooses to remain in the main 616 reality and joins up with X-Force. But being on Earth 616, he does get mistaken for the original Nightcrawler, which he does not appreciate. Like at one point, he even pushes Kitty Pryde for mistaking him for a resurrected Nightcrawler. Now while working with X-Force, he has successfully took out his reality's Blob by teleporting a shark into his stomach, which devoured Blob from the inside out, which is terrifying, and Iceman, who he led into a factory boiler room, where I guess you can imagine what happened next. Number 3, Ghost Panther. Ghost Panther from Marvel's Warp World is a combination of the Wakandan prince T'Challa, aka Black Panther, and the demonic spirit of vengeance, Ghost Rider. This combination is perfect to explore a new aspect of culture meeting mythology, which is the excuse we're gonna go with to justify a hellfire skeleton that rides a giant fiery panther. Don't you dare look at me and tell me that this is not amazing. Don't you dare. In this story, T'Challa was exiled from Wakanda for his arrogance and came to America, becoming a stunt rider named Johnny Blaze, which is very original. After an accident leaves him fighting for his life, a demon offers him his life in exchange for becoming the all-powerful Ghost Panther. In case you don't realize why this is awesome, let me reiterate that this is King T'Challa as a hellfire-wielding spirit of vengeance riding on top of a hellfire-covered panther. Need I say more? Number 2, Punisher Max. Punisher Max was an adult comic, and for a guy whose main thing is ushering people to the pearly gates, it makes sense that this setting suits his character best. Removing the Punisher from all the costumes and superpowers of the regular Marvel universe and dropping him right into an America facing the early days of the War on Terror, it kicked off with the CIA trying to recruit Frank, which sets off a violent political game. This Frank Castle was a veteran of the Cold War, running Black Ops alongside Nick Fury in Vietnam, and he is not someone you want to mess around with. Like, he lights out Microchip during the first storyline just for helping the CIA to even find Punisher. His enemies here are also much more threatening and scarily realistic compared to anything that Earth 616 has thrown at the Punisher, with a big shout out to Barracuda specifically. Another former soldier just as ruthless and skilled as Frank is. Punisher Max shows the very real physical and emotional damage that Frank Castle's crusade would cause him in real life, obviously with a tiny suspension of disbelief that comes with it being a comic book. If you choose to give it a read, just be warned, it is extremely graphic. Number 1, End of Time Doom. Earth 14412 is home to a variant of Doctor Doom who refers to himself as the Fist of Iron, the Starbrand Supreme, and the Master of Mystic Vengeance. This is End of Time Doom. In this reality, King Loki had destroyed all of humanity, with Doom being one of the few survivors. This gave Doom the opportunity to infuse himself with the powers of Iron Fist, Starbrand, the Sorcerer Supreme, and Ghost Rider, making him practically a god. King Thor and his 3 daughters, the Goddesses of Thunder, restored life to the Earth, and Doom showed up conveniently to conquer it. He completely owned the 3 daughters of Old King Thor, and he was only stopped when Old King Thor, who wielded the Thor Force, was also empowered by the Phoenix Force. It's such an epic version of Doctor Doom, of which there are honestly very many, but this one is my favorite. Kicking off the list at number 10 is Spider-Man Punisher. Yes, I am sort of cheating for this one. On Earth 71928, location of the What If Peter Parker Became the Punisher story, Peter Parker, well, becomes the Punisher. It's in the title. On the night Uncle Ben's life was drawn to a close, instead of following the classic story, Peter caught and dispatched the killer using the same weapon that took his uncle's life. From that moment, Peter tried to avoid going full murderous Punisher at first, but having taken the first step and knowing how much more permanent of a solution it is to just take them out, he went full force into that lifestyle. He carried the iron that took Uncle Ben's life, as well as a large assortment of other weaponry, including his web shooters with multiple different types of ammunition that allowed him to take down the Sinister Six with ease, and he was even able to save Gwen Stacy. So technically, this Punisher was not only better than Punisher, but also a more effective crime fighter than Spider-Man himself, in a way. Number 9, Punisher 2099. In the far-flung future of the year 2099, Frank Castle was long gone. So Jake Gallows took up the fight. Jake was an officer of the Public Eye Police Force. In an attack ordered by Kron Stone, the Venom of 2099, Jake lost his mother, brother, and sister-in-law, while also being gravely injured himself. Being inspired by the war journals of Frank Castle, after his recovery, Jake became the new Punisher, taking up the crusade on crime after getting his revenge on Venom. Jake specifically sought out justice for the poor, using his 2099 technology alongside modern and futuristic weaponry to operate as a vigilante before serving as Victor Von Doom's Minister of Punishment. You'll see him most recently in the recent Savage Avengers comics, but no spoilers, so sorry. Number 8. Punisher Noir. The 2009 Noir series from Marvel Comics saw several heroes existing in the Prohibition era post-World War I. Kicking off with the hit of Spider-Man Noir, other characters like Iron Man, Daredevil, the X-Men, and of course, the Punisher soon followed. In this timeline, Frank Castiglione Sr. was a hero of World War I, who had a huge skull tattoo on his chest as a means of intimidating his German opponents in the trenches. And he was also like an American James Bond-style hero going on missions against the Russians and Germans. Unfortunately though, when he returns from the war, he finds himself dispatched from life because of his previous government missions. I bet you thought he would be the Punisher here, huh? Well, you're wrong, because after finding his father's arsenal, Frank Jr. wears a skull emblazoned balaclava and hunts down his father's executioners, who turn out to be noir versions of Jigsaw, Bullseye, and Barracuda, before a final run-in with a fan favorite, the Russian. While some of the noir characters missed the mark in my eyes, Punisher Noir is actually pretty great. Number 7. Five Ronin. While we're on the topic of historical versions of Frank Castle, I have to mention one of my favorite little stories. Five Ronin from 2011 moves the Marvel Universe back in time to ancient feudal Japan, with 5 issues each focusing on samurai versions of the Punisher, the Hulk, Deadpool, Psylocke, and Wolverine. It is so cool. Each character gets a short standalone story where all of them eventually encounter the wandering Deadpool, who narratively links them all together for us. This version of the Punisher shows him returning to Japan from war in Korea to find a rival has taken the opportunity to take away his family and claim his land. As is usually the case with Frank Castle, or in this world, Akagi, this leads to some ruthless revenge. Wielding a katana and a big old blunderbuss that I forget the name of, Samurai Frank brings a decided end to anyone that attempts to cross his path during his quest for vengeance. Number 6. Franken Castle. After he was taken off the board by Daken on orders from Norman Osborn during the Dark Reign event, Frank Castle, yes, the Punisher, was revived by the Legion of Monsters as an undead zombie-like monster known as Franken Castle. The Legion resurrected Frank to recruit him in their fight against the villain known as Hellsguard, who was systematically taking out monsters using samurai-like assassins. Although he originally refused to help them, Frank got involved after seeing some innocent little monsters being dispatched too, and that is not something Frank is willing to abide. He went on to slay hordes of Hellsguard's men. It's honestly an incredibly interesting moment in Frank Castle's history, and it got this version of Frank moved to Earth 666. He also nearly enacted revenge against Daken, being stopped by Wolverine before he was returned to his human form through the Bloodstone. But he kept going on in 666, and it's really cool. Number 5. Marvel Universe versus the Punisher. In this universe, the Punisher interrupts an arms deal involving what he thinks is a briefcase nuke, only to discover that it is in fact a man-made virus that, for Frank Castle, makes him immune to infection, illness, and disease. That's pretty good, but it didn't quite do this for everyone else though. Problem here is that the chemical weapon found its way into the water supply and then into the food, and started in New York, spreading to the whole world through infected travelers. And then it started turning people and heroes into starting with Spider-Man. An outbreak spread and led to insane events, including a war against the cannibals, who then became the dominant beings of this earth. But the real star of the show is Frank Castle, the Punisher. This is one of the greatest and most brutal Punisher stories ever. It plays on many of his characters' flaws and strengths, but the story also shows him defeating so many different heroes who you and I have always wanted to see him face, and who we doubt he would actually be able to defeat, but he does it anyways. It's also a surprisingly deep story that has a ton of awesome moments. Definitely check it out. Number 4, Cosmic Ghost Rider. In the Thanos Wins story arc from writers Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw from Thanos Volume 2, one hero who ended up surviving the attack on the Earth by an alternate timeline Thanos was actually Frank Castle. But he did it in a bit of a different way. Frank was hit with debris and actually passed on pretty easily during the final stand against Thanos on Earth. Definitely a lame way to go. So once Frank made it to Hell, he made a deal with Mephisto to return to Earth for vengeance. And he was given the power to do just that as the Ghost Rider, the spirit of vengeance. Unfortunately, when this new Ghost Rider showed back up on Earth, everything was already lost. Being completely alone in the ruins of Earth, Frank went completely insane. Eventually, as he does, Galactus showed up, and being the only Earthling left alive, and a very powerful one at that, Frank made a deal. Galactus was allowed to have the Earth if Galactus made Frank his new herald, granting Frank the power cosmic as well as the spirit of vengeance. These two spent hundreds of years together until Thanos completely flattened Galactus. Then, Frank became King Thanos' #1 dude, going on time-hopping adventures and being completely awesome. Number 3, Space Punisher. In 2012, Marvel showed us a very different version of Frank Castle when they released a 4-issue run called Space Punisher. The series is nuts, super colorful, and heavily inspired by the pulpy sci-fi of the 1950s. There's an awesome robotic sidekick, insane versions of Marvel superheroes and supervillains, including an absolutely monstrous and terrifying version of the Hulk. But it's all centered around a ponytailed, laser sword, blaster wielding version of the Punisher who finds himself facing space werewolves, space fascists, and space supervillains. It is worth noting, however, that this little weird Punisher story was divisive as hell. Very different from anything before it, Space Punisher was unique to say the least, but it's a comic book. If you can get past the weirdness, it's kind of enjoyable. Number 2, Netflix. We have had 3 movies of debatable quality that have brought Frank Castle to the screen, and while Ray Stevenson and Thomas Jane, and I guess Dolph Lundgren did decent jobs as Frank Castle, when Jon Bernthal showed up as the Punisher in the 2nd season of Netflix's acclaimed Daredevil show, he did it better than anyone before him. Or, at least for me, it was the most believable version of the Punisher I had ever seen on a screen. Bernthal brought fury and intensity at all times, almost to the point of seeming positively insane, especially when compared with the morals of Matt Murdock. His character was also incredibly capable and brutal, as is necessary for the Punisher to work. When he got his own show in 2017, it brought everything to a whole different level, telling a conspiracy story that also took a really good look at PTSD in soldiers, while also bringing the right amount of brutality that you'd expect from a Punisher story. Even my mom liked this show, and she doesn't even read comics. That's the highest praise I know how to give. And coming in at number 1, Punisher Max. Punisher Max was an adult comic, and for a guy whose main thing is ushering people to the pearly gates, it makes sense that this setting suits his character best. Removing the Punisher from all the costumes and superpowers of the regular Marvel universe and dropping him right into an America facing the early days of the War on Terror, it kicked off with the CIA trying to recruit Frank, which sets off a hugely violent political game. This Frank Castle was a veteran of the Cold War, running Black Ops alongside Nick Fury in Vietnam, and he is not someone you want to mess around with. Like, he lights out Microchip during the first storyline just for helping the CIA to even find Frank Castle. His enemies here are also much more threatening and scarily realistic compared to anything that Earth-616 has thrown at the Punisher. With a big shout out to Barracuda specifically, another former soldier just as ruthless and skilled as Frank is. Punisher Max shows the very real physical and emotional damage that Frank Castle's crusade would cause him in real life. Obviously with a tiny suspension of disbelief that comes with a comic book. If you choose to give it a read, just be warned that it is extremely graphic and you shouldn't read it unless you're over the age of like, I'd say 18.
Halfway through, in at number 5, Red Son. Imagine, if you will, Batman being a force for Mother Russia. The Batman of this story was born to a pair of dissidents who were later killed by Stalin's police force. He vowed to seek vengeance against Fyodor Roslov, the captain of the police force. After 20 years, he became the most wanted man in the Soviet Union and continuously challenged the authorities, executing acts of terror against Superman's regime and evading Roslov's police force skillfully. I couldn't help help it. Just that name kind of makes you have to go into that accent. The people revered him as a legend, impossible to kill, and the ghost of killed dissidents. Roslov convinced Batman to team up with him and eliminate Superman, arguing that with Superman out of the way, Batman's vendetta against Roslov would be easier. Batman agreed and kidnapped Wonder Woman, using her lasso to draw Superman into a wasteland where he bombarded him with simulated red sunlight, and Batman intended to lock Superman away in a cellar, but Wonder Woman destroyed her lasso and the generator powering the lamps, which freed Superman. Batman then offed himself by detonating a bomb that was inside of his body to avoid being lobotomized and locked up, because of course that's gonna happen. In 4, Batman the Merciless. When Ares, the Greek god of war, created a helmet that amplified his powers 100-fold, war broke out in an effort to stop him. For 2 years, Batman and Wonder Woman fought side by side to get close enough to attempt to stop the god. It was during this war that Bruce and Diana fell in love with each other. They and their allies made a pledge to kill the god of war in order to end his reign of terror once and for all, and as they finally mounted an attack to kill Ares, the two were able to get the helmet off the god of war. However, Diana was incapacitated, causing Batman to believe that she had died. Driven by grief, Bruce put on the helmet of the god of war to defeat Ares, despite being warned of its corrupting influence by Diana earlier on. Believing he could wield it mercifully while making war fair and just, he succeeded in killing Ares but was turned into a merciless warrior himself, who started to see his old code as worthless. Despite learning that Diana had actually survived and was only stunned by Ares, Bruce was too addicted to the power of the helmet to let it go. He in fact chose to kill the woman he loved rather than risk losing the helmet. And then with virtually unlimited power and no sense of morality, Bruce went on to wage war on the entire world. Because, you know, gotta love angry Batman. This is basically just Injustice, Superman, but Batman. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Red Death. Red Death is a villainous amalgamation of Batman and the Flash. Possessing super speed and a bloodlust like no other, his origin on Earth -52 is a dark one. Batman started off fighting crime with Robin, obviously, but Robins kept dying. Robin after Robin, none would survive. So Batman grew increasingly extreme within his methods and basically lost all sense of morality. This led him to then seek out Barry, the Flash, for his Speed Force powers. However, when Barry refused to comply, Batman used weapons from his various enemies to incapacitate Barry. Batman then rigged up a cosmic treadmill to his Batmobile somehow. I don't know how a treadmill is gonna help power a car, but then he attached Barry to the hood and drove them both into the Speed Force, causing a fusion of the two. The resulting entity was an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for death, while Barry's consciousness was trapped inside of Bruce's body. Oh boy. Red Death was later approached by the Batman Who Laughs and convinced to join Barbados's Dark Knights, whose aim was to conquer the multiverse, because of course it is. The logistics of how this came to be are unclear, but it's still freaking terrifying. I don't know how a treadmill makes the Batmobile able to get into the Speed Force, but you know what? 88 miles an hour, Marty. Let's go. Penultimately, in at number 2, Batman Beyond. Amanda Waller, director of Project Cadmus, needed a new Batman to continue to fight for justice, and saw genetic engineering as the solution. She created Project Batman Beyond by using Bruce Wayne's DNA to rewrite a male human's reproductive material, and found a couple in Gotham City with a psychological profile nearly identical to that of Bruce's parents, the McGinnises. Warren McGinnis was secretly injected with a nanotech solution that rewrote his DNA to basically be Bruce's, and then a year later, Terry was born with half of his mother's genetic material and half of Bruce's. To complete Terry's origins to become a crime fighter, Amanda planned to have the same trauma that inspired Bruce to become Batman happen to Terry's parents. Yes, this woman plotted to have a kid's parents assassinated right in front of him. After a night at the theater watching The Grey Ghost Strikes, Amanda had the Phantasm go over to kill Terry's parents. However, Phantasm refused to go along with the plan and allowed the McGinnises to continue on, unaware of what might have happened that night. Terry still became the new Batman, fighting for justice in a futuristic Gotham City, but still, come on, Amanda. I mean, like, I know you're Amanda Waller, but like still, come on, okay? But also Batman Beyond is like iconic and everyone loves it. And finally, in at number 1, The Batman Who Laughs. The story of Batman of Earth -22 was not much different from that of any other version of the Caped Crusader. When he was a boy, Bruce watched his parents get killed in an alleyway, vowing vengeance against crime. He trained for years and years to become a hero and then became Batman, fighting supervillains in Gotham. But everything went sideways for this Batman when the Joker started a killing spree across Gotham. The clown had discovered that he was dying from the same chemicals that had actually turned him into what he was and wanted to take everyone with him. He killed all of Batman's enemies, including Penguin, Catwoman, Killer Croc, and the Ventriloquist, and the Joker also killed Commissioner Gordon, who accidentally sprung an acid trap on his notebook and melted his face off. After bombing a hospital and recreating the scene from Bruce's parents' death right in front of him multiple times, this Batman lost control and broke Joker's neck. Unbeknownst to Batman though, the Joker exhaled a toxin that contaminated Bruce's heart, which infected anyone close to him if he had died. In this case, it was Batman, so this caused him to snap and basically become the new Joker before taking over Earth -22 and later on gaining cosmic power. So yeah, I'm gonna put that at number 1. That's terrifying but also dope.